The night the diner went quiet. The waitress, the Mafia king, and the secret that burned a town to the ground. They dragged her behind the counter like a sack of flour. 4 men, drunk on cheap whiskey and something meaner, and not one soul in that diner lifted a finger. Lena Cross tasted copper before she understood what was happening. A fist found her ribs. Another found her jaw. Somewhere above the ringing in her ears, she heard a coffee cup shatter. Then the bell over the front door rang, small, almost polite. And every man in the room froze, because the stranger who walked in didn't blink at the blood on the tiles. He just smiled. Before we go any further, if you make it to the end of this story, do me a favor. Hit that like button and drop the name of the city you're watching from down in the comments. I want to see how far Lena's story travels tonight. Stay with me. This one gets dark before it gets good. The town was called Belmore, and it wasn't really a town so much as a rest stop that forgot to die. One main road cracked down the middle like an old scar. A gas station with 2 pumps, one of them taped over with a handwritten sign that said, "Out, don't ask, squad." A hardware store that only opened when the owner felt like it. And at the far end of the strip, sitting crooked on a patch of gravel that used to be something nicer, a diner called Hal's. Hal had been dead for 11 years. Nobody bothered to change the name. Lena Cross worked the late shift 4 nights a week, sometimes 5 when Margie called out with her back again. She was 24 years old, small in the shoulders, with dark hair she kept pulled back in a knot because the fryer grease got into everything if you let it. She wore the same 2 uniforms on rotation. She walked to work because her car had given up in September and she hadn't told anybody. She lived above the laundromat 2 blocks down, in a studio with a window that didn't quite close, and she paid her rent in cash every first of the month to a landlord who never asked why. Nobody in Belmore asked much of anything. That was the point of Belmore. On the night everything changed, Lena clocked in at 9:45. She was 15 minutes early because she always was. Dwight, the cook, grunted at her from behind the pass. Dwight communicated mostly in grunts. 3 of them meant hello, 2 of them meant the fryer's acting up, and 1 of them meant leave me alone. Tonight was a 1 grunter. "Evening to you too," she said, tying her apron. He didn't look up. The place was mostly empty. An old man named Reggie sat in the corner booth nursing a black coffee like he always did on Thursday nights, because Thursday was the night his wife used to make meatloaf, and he didn't want to be in the house. A trucker 2 booths down, ball cap low, eating pie with a fork he held like a shovel. And a young couple up by the window, arguing in the quiet, hissing way people argue when they don't want the waitress to hear. Lena heard anyway. She always heard. "You couldn't work 10 years of tables without learning how to listen without looking. Told you we shouldn't have come this way. Then drive, Kevin. Drive or shut up." Lena topped off Reggie's coffee without asking. He nodded at her the way he always did, a little bow of the head, like she was somebody. She smiled back. It was a tired smile, but it was real, and Reggie was the kind of man who could tell the difference. "Cold out there tonight, Miss Lena?" "Cold enough." "You walking home?" "I always walk home, Reggie." He clicked his tongue. "One of these days, I'm going to buy you a car." "One of these days, I'm going to let you." He chuckled into his cup. It was a joke they'd been telling each other for 2 years. She liked Reggie. Reggie was safe. Reggie smelled like Old Spice and pipe tobacco, and he tipped $3 on a $2 coffee every single time because he knew. She moved on, checked the trucker's pie, refilled the couple's waters, wiped down the counter even though it didn't need wiping, because wiping down the counter was the thing you did when you didn't want to stand still. Standing still in Hal's at night made you feel like the building was watching you. Outside, a truck door slammed, then another, then a third. Lena's hands didn't stop moving, but her eyes went to the window. 4 men. Big men. Boots and flannel, and the loose-limbed walk of guys who'd been drinking since lunch. One of them was already laughing at something before he got to the door, a wet barking laugh that made her stomach tighten before she could tell herself not to be dramatic. The bell jingled. "Well, hell, boys, look at this. Place is still open." They came in like weather. 4 of them filling the doorway at the same time, shoulders bumping, one of them shoving another hard enough that the other had to catch himself on a booth. The booth was empty. It didn't matter. Reggie set his coffee down real slow. The trucker pulled his hat lower. The couple by the window stopped arguing mid-sentence and suddenly became very interested in their menus, even though they'd already ordered. Evening, Lena said, flat, professional. Sit wherever you'd like. I'll be right with you. The one in front was the loudest. Big guy, maybe 6'3", beard coming in uneven, eyes already glassy, a scar on his eyebrow that pulled the skin tight. He looked her up and down once, then twice, slower the second time. You'll be right with us, he said. You hear that, Pete? She'll be right with us. Pete giggled. Pete was a giggler. Pete was small and wiry and the kind of small that made up for itself by standing too close. He dropped into a booth, and the other two slid in around him, already yelling for menus they could have grabbed themselves from the stand by the door. Coming up, Lena said. She walked. She did not hurry. Hurrying was a thing Prey did, and her mother, God rest her, no, her mother, wherever she was. Her mother had told her one time when Lena was 11 and a boy at school had made her cry, her mother had said, "Don't you ever let them see you run, baby. You walk like you got somewhere to be, and it ain't with them." She walked. What can I get you, fellas? What you got? Menu's in your hand. The Scar one, he was the one everyone kept looking to, so he was the one in charge. Flicked the menu open, flicked it closed, tossed it on the table. Beer. We don't serve alcohol. Signs on the door. Signs on the door, he repeated to his friends, in a mincing little voice that made Pete giggle again. Okay, sweetheart, coffee, 4 coffees, and whatever's hot. Meatloaf specials still on, chicken fried steak, burgers. Burgers, 4 burgers. How do you want them? On a plate. Pete laughed so hard he smacked the table. The other two, she hadn't named them yet in her head. She was trying not to. She was trying to just get through the order. The other two laughed too. But one of them, the one with the buzzed hair and the tattoo crawling up out of his collar, didn't. He was watching her, steady. He hadn't laughed at anything yet. That was the one she didn't like. The loud ones you could read. The quiet ones you couldn't. 4 burgers, Lena said. Coming up. She walked back to the pass and clipped the ticket. Dwight read it. Dwight looked through the pass, once, at the booth. Then he looked at her. You good? It was the longest sentence Dwight had said to her in 3 months. I'm fine. You want me to call Earl? Earl was the sheriff. Earl was 67 years old, slept with his radio off, and had told Lena once, when her neighbor's boyfriend had put a fist through her door, that it takes 2 to tango, hun. Earl was not going to help anybody. I'm fine, Dwight, he grunted. One grunt. Leave me alone. But he didn't mean it at her. He meant it at the situation. She could tell. She poured 4 coffees. She carried them over on a tray, and she set each one down gently so nothing spilled, and she did not lean in further than she had to. The Scar one watched her hands the whole time. What's your name, sweetheart? Lena. Lena, that's pretty. Lena what? Just Lena. Just Lena. You hear that, Pete? I hear it. Stuck up a little, ain't she? She didn't answer. She turned to go. And that was when the Scar one, she'd find out later his name was Jesse Holland, and she'd find out a lot of other things about Jesse Holland that she wished she didn't know, reached out and caught her by the wrist. Not hard. Not yet. I asked you a question, just Lena. No, you didn't. The table went quiet. She'd done it without thinking. She hadn't meant to say it. It had just come out. Pete stopped giggling. Jesse's thumb pressed down on the inside of her wrist, where the skin was thin. He smiled at her. It was a patient smile, the kind of smile a cat wears. You're right, he said. I didn't, my bad. He let go. She walked back to the counter and her hands were shaking, and she set the empty tray down and put both palms flat on the counter until the shaking stopped. Dwight was watching her through the pass. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at Reggie either, even though she could feel Reggie watching, could feel him deciding something. Don't you dare, Reggie, she thought. You're 71 years old. Don't you dare. The burgers came up fast. Dwight had put a rush on them. She knew why. He wanted them fed and gone. She wanted them fed and gone. Everybody in Hal's wanted them fed and gone. She carried the plates out 2 at a time. Here you go. Ketchup's on the table. Anything else? Yeah, Jesse said, mouth already full. Sit with us. I'm working. Take a break. I can't. Sure you can. Your boss back there? He pointed his burger at the pass. You don't care. Do you, Chief? Do you care if Lena sits with us? Dwight didn't answer. Dwight was the kind of man who answered with silence, and his silence right now was loud. See, Jesse said, he don't care. I have other tables. Other tables. He looked around the diner theatrically. The couple, the trucker, Reggie. Oh yeah, real busy night. Enjoy your food. She turned. She got 2 steps. Hey, sharper this time. Not a drunk man's voice. A different voice underneath the drunk one. She stopped. She didn't want to stop. Her feet stopped anyway. I'm talking to you. I heard you. Then turn around when a man's talking to you. She turned, slow. Is there something wrong with your food, sir? You keep calling me sir. That's what I call customers. I ain't a customer. I'm Jesse. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Say it. Sir, say it. The trucker stood up. Quietly, but he stood up, and he pulled a wallet out of his back pocket and dropped a 20 on the table without looking at the bill, and he walked out. The bell jingled. The door shut. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody even seemed to notice. But Lena noticed. Lena noticed the way she noticed everything, and she filed it away in the place in her head where she kept all the small betrayals. Enjoy your food, she said again. Jesse's jaw worked. For a second, she thought he was going to swing right there, right across the table, right there in front of Reggie and the couple and Dwight at the pass. He didn't. He laughed instead. A short, ugly laugh. Okay, just Lena. Okay. She walked away. She made it to the counter. She picked up a rag and started wiping, and this time her hands weren't shaking. They were doing something worse. They were very still, and her brain was running the kitchen's back door and the alley and the fire door and counting how many seconds it would take to get to each of them. Reggie was at her elbow before she saw him move. Lena. Reggie, go home. Lena, honey, listen to me. Go home. He looked at her. His old eyes got shiny, and for a second she thought he was going to cry. This old man who'd buried a wife and a son, and God knew what else, and she felt a thing break loose in her chest that she didn't have time to feel. Tomorrow's meatloaf day, Reg. I'll save you a slice. He nodded. He put his hand over hers on the counter, just for a second, squeezed once, and then he walked out. He didn't hurry. He walked like a man with somewhere to be, and it wasn't with them. And Lena watched him go with the bell jingling, and she thought he heard you, Mama. He walked like you said. It was 9 minutes after he left that Jessie got up. She was at the pass when she heard the booth scrape. She felt the air in the room change before she heard it, actually, the way a dog feels a thunderstorm before the rain. She turned around. He was coming toward her. All 4 of them were coming toward her. Not fast, loose. The quiet one with the buzzed hair was in the back, hands in his pockets. The scared couple by the window were already gone. She hadn't even seen them leave. Just their plates still on the table, half a milkshake melting. Bill's on the counter, she said. You can pay up front, or I can run the card. You disrespected me. Sir, your bill? You disrespected me in front of my boys. Dwight stepped out from behind the pass. He had the big kitchen knife in one hand, not raised, just held. All right, fellas, we're closed. 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 Pay your bill and get out. Jesse looked at him, looked at the knife, smiled. Okay, Chief. He reached into his jacket and Lena's stomach went to ice. But it wasn't a gun he came out with. It was a wad of cash, and he peeled off 2 20s and let them flutter down onto the floor between him and Dwight. There's your tip, Chief. Get out of my diner. We're going. Jesse turned his head, slow, like his neck was on a swivel, and he looked at Lena. Just Lena. Walk us out, sweetheart. Manners. She ain't walking you nowhere. Chief? Pete moved. Lena didn't even see it. It was that fast. Pete came up from the side and his elbow caught Dwight across the bridge of the nose, and Dwight went down hard, the knife clattering. And the quiet one in the back stepped forward and kicked the knife away under the counter like he'd done it before. Like he'd done it 100 times. Dwight! Lena was around the counter before she knew she was moving. She didn't make it far. Jesse caught her around the middle and lifted her clean off her feet, and she kicked, and she got an elbow into his throat, and for a second, for one sweet, stupid second, she thought she might actually get loose. Then Pete hit her. Fist, square in the ribs. She heard something crack, and for a long, bright second, she didn't feel anything at all. Then she felt everything. Jessie dropped her, and she hit the floor on her hip, and the pain came up her side like a wire. And somebody kicked her in the stomach, and somebody else grabbed her by the hair and dragged her across the tile behind the counter, dragged her out of sight of the window. Get her up. She ain't getting up, Jessie. Get her up. They got her up. Pete on one arm and the quiet one on the other, and they put her against the wall next to the ice machine, which was humming the same stupid hum it hummed every night of her life. And Jessie stepped in close and put one hand flat on the wall beside her head. You're going to apologize now. She spit in his face. She didn't plan it. It came up out of her like a reflex, a thing from deeper than her brain, and she saw the blood in it before it landed, her own blood. And it hit him on the cheek and hung there for a second before it ran. The room went so quiet she could hear the ice machine click. Oh, Jessie said very softly. Oh, sweetheart. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. He hit her. She'd been hit before. Once by a boyfriend when she was 19, once by her father when she was 8 because she'd dropped a glass. She knew what a slap felt like. This wasn't a slap. This was a closed fist at full speed from a man who was 6'3" and 240 and angry, and her head snapped sideways into the wall, and something in her mouth broke, and the world went bright and then dark, and then bright again, and when it came back she was on the floor. They were kicking her. All of them, or maybe just 3 of them. Maybe the quiet one wasn't kicking. She couldn't tell. She couldn't see for the blood in her eye. Her arms were up around her head, and every time a boot came down on her ribs, something else inside her gave. She counted. She didn't know why she was counting. 4, 5, 6. A foot came down on her left hand, and she heard her own knuckle pop, and she laughed. Actually laughed. A wet, stupid sound because it didn't even hurt the worst. Because there were so many other things hurting worse. Jessie, man, enough. That was the quiet one. The first thing he'd said all night. She ain't even... Shut up, Marcus. She's done, man. Look at her. She's done. Jessie stopped. His chest was heaving. Lena could see his boots from where her cheek was pressed to the tile. Black boots scuffed at the toe, a long reddish-brown smear across the top of the left one. She focused on the smear. She focused very hard on the smear because if she focused on the smear, she didn't have to think about the fact that she couldn't feel her left hand anymore. Get up, Jessie said. She didn't. Get up. She tried. She got as far as her elbow. Her elbow wouldn't hold her. She went back down. Jessie, I said get her up, Marcus. Marcus didn't move. Pete did. Pete grabbed her under the armpit and hauled, and the pain that went through her ribs was the worst pain of the whole night, worse than the fist, worse than the kicks, a hot white tearing, and she made a sound she didn't recognize as her own. They propped her against the wall. Her head wouldn't stay up. It kept lolling forward. Jessie grabbed her chin and lifted it. Look at me. She looked. One of her eyes wasn't opening all the way. The other one worked. She looked. You know what your problem is, Justlina? She didn't answer. She wasn't sure she could. Your problem is you don't know your place. Behind him, very small, very far away, the bell over the door rang. Jessie didn't hear it. He was too busy enjoying himself. But Marcus heard. Marcus's head came up like a dog's, sharp, and his hand went into his jacket, and he turned around slow. And what Marcus saw was this. A man. One man. Standing just inside the door of Hal's diner, hands loose at his sides, a black overcoat falling open over a dark suit that cost more money than the whole of Belmore would see in a year. No hat. Hair going a little silver at the temples. A face that was not angry, and not scared, and not surprised. A face that was, in fact, completely empty, the way a frozen lake is empty, with God knew what underneath it. Behind him, through the glass, you could see shapes. 2, maybe 3. Standing perfectly still in the parking lot, waiting. The man at the door looked at Dwight on the floor with the blood on his face. He looked at the 220s by the counter. He looked at the broken glass. He looked at Pete, frozen mid-turn, and at the quiet one with his hand in his jacket, and at Jessie, who was just now, finally, realizing the room had changed. And then his eyes went to Lena. They held there, longer than they'd held anywhere else. Not soft, not pitying, something else. Something that measured. Who the hell are you? Jessie said. The man at the door didn't answer at first. He took one step inside. The bell jingled a second time as the door swung closed behind him. He looked down at his own shoes, as if he'd noticed something on them, and he took out a white handkerchief and he bent, unhurried, and he wiped a single fleck of something off the toe. He put the handkerchief back in his pocket. Then he looked up. "My name," he said, "is Adrian Voss." His voice was quiet. It was the kind of quiet you had to lean in for. It was the kind of quiet that the loud men in the room suddenly understood they should have been using all along. "That name means something to you, friend?" Jesse laughed. It was the wrong kind of laugh. It had a crack in it. "Should it?" Adrian Voss considered him. He considered him the way a man considers a piece of meat at a butcher's counter. "No," he said. "I suppose not." He looked at Lena again. "Miss, can you hear me?" She tried to nod. Her head wasn't really working. She managed something. It was enough. "Good." He didn't come closer. He stayed where he was. "I'm going to ask you to hold on for another minute. Can you do that for me?" She managed the something again. "Good girl." He turned back to Jesse. He did it slowly. He put his hands in the pockets of his overcoat. When he spoke again, his voice was exactly the same, quiet, exactly the same flat, and somehow that was worse than if he'd shouted. "You have approximately 30 seconds, Adrian Voss said, to explain to me why my evening has been interrupted." "Mister, I don't know who you think you are." 25 seconds. "But you're about to get yourself 20. Jesse went for his back pocket. Whatever was in his back pocket, he didn't get it out. Adrian Voss didn't move. Adrian Voss didn't even take his hands out of his coat. But the door behind him opened and two men came through it. And they came through it fast, and they came through it the way men come through a door when they have done it many, many times before in many, many other rooms. The first one put Pete face down on a booth table so hard the table cracked. The second one took Marcus's wrist, the wrist of the hand that was in his jacket, and did something to it that made a sound Lena would hear in her sleep for the rest of her life. Marcus screamed. The thing in his jacket fell out onto the floor. It was a gun. Of course it was a gun. The fourth man, the one whose name Lena didn't know and would never learn, tried to run for the back. He didn't make it past the pass. A third man had come in through the kitchen. He'd come in without a sound. Lena hadn't even heard the back door. Jesse was the last one standing. Jesse had his hand halfway to his back pocket still, and he was frozen, and his face had gone a color Lena had never seen on a face before, a sort of gray-white, like old cheese. Adrian Voss took his hands out of his coat. He walked across the diner between the upturned booth and the fallen chair and the 220s on the floor. He stopped in front of Jesse. He was shorter than Jesse by 3 inches. It didn't matter. Nothing about the room suggested it mattered. "I asked you a question," Adrian Voss said. I didn't..." The girl. It was a misunderstanding, man. It was just, look at her. Look at her. Jesse looked. His whole face was shaking. Lena looked back at him from the floor. She didn't know what her face looked like. From the way Jesse's jaw worked, it wasn't good. "A misunderstanding," Adrian Voss said. He said it like he was tasting the word, like he didn't care for the flavor. "You know, I grew up with a man who used that word a lot. My uncle. Every time he put my aunt in the hospital, it was a misunderstanding." He tilted his head. "She died of one, eventually." Jesse didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. "Take them outside," Adrian Voss said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His men were already moving. Pete was hauled up from the cracked table, nose bleeding freely, hands behind his back. Marcus was on his knees, cradling his wrist, and somebody lifted him by the collar like a kitten. The fourth one was dragged past the pass with his feet trailing. Jesse didn't move. His eyes were on Lena. "Please," he said. "Mister, please. Out. I got kids, man. I got out." The man who'd come in behind Adrian put a hand on Jesse's shoulder. Jesse flinched like he'd been burned. He went, and he went quiet, and the bell jingled on the door, and then the door closed, and the diner was quiet except for the hum of the ice machine and Dwight's wet breathing from the floor, and Lena's own breath going in and out in little torn pieces. Adrian Voss looked around the room. He walked to the counter. He picked up a clean napkin from the stack by the register. He walked back. He crouched carefully, the tails of his overcoat pooling on the bloody tile, and he did not touch her. He held the napkin out. "Your mouth," he said. "You're bleeding." She took it. Her left hand wouldn't close, so she took it with her right. She pressed it to her lip. It came away red in a second. "What's your name?" "Lena." "Lena what?" She hesitated. She didn't know why. This man had just done whatever he had just done, had just unmade 4 men in under 30 seconds without breaking a sweat, and now he was crouched in front of her with a napkin and asking her last name. "Cross." "Lena Cross." He nodded, once, as if confirming something to himself. "How bad is the hand?" "I think it's broken." "Ribs?" "Maybe." "Can you stand if I help you?" "I don't know." "We're going to find out." He put out his arm. Not his hand, his arm, bent at the elbow, like a man offering to escort a lady at a wedding. She stared at it. She didn't know what to do with it. Her head wasn't working right. She could feel blood in her hair, and she could feel her eyes swelling shut, and she could feel the cold of the tile under her hip. And this man in his $5,000 coat was holding his arm out to her like they were going to the theater. She took it. She put her good hand in the crook of his elbow, and she pulled, and he lifted her, and the pain nearly put her back down again, but he was stronger than he looked, and he held her steady until her feet were under her. He held her until she nodded. Then he eased her back against the wall, and he stepped away, and he did not touch her again. "Sit her down," he said, over his shoulder, to a man Lana hadn't even noticed come back in. "The booth," gently. "Yes, boss." "And someone see to the cook." "Yes, boss." "Lena." He turned back to her. His voice was still quiet. His eyes were not quiet at all. His eyes were doing something she didn't have a word for. "I need you to look at me. Can you do that?" She looked. "I need you to listen. Are you listening?" "Yes." Those men did not walk into this diner by accident tonight. The words didn't make sense to her at first. They landed somewhere and sat there and didn't open. "What?" "The big one. Jesse. I've seen his face before." Adrian Voss's jaw moved, just once, a small, tight movement. "I wasn't sure until he begged. Men like him beg in a very particular way. I know the way. He works for somebody I've been looking for a long time. I don't know what you... I know you don't. That's what concerns me." He looked at her for a long moment. "Lena, is there any reason someone in this world would want you dead?" She stared at him. She opened her mouth. She closed it. Because the honest answer was no, of course not. I'm a waitress. I'm nobody. I've been nobody my whole life. And then, somewhere very far back in her head, in a place she had not visited in 2 weeks and hoped never to visit again, a door she had tried to nail shut creaked open. A black car. A parking lot behind a motel off Route 9. 2 men in suits and a third man with a briefcase. She'd been walking home from a double shift. She'd cut through because it was raining. She'd seen the briefcase change hands. She'd seen the face of the man who took it. She'd seen the face clearly, under the motel light, because he'd turned right as she was passing, and for one frozen second his eyes had met hers across 40 feet of wet asphalt. She had put her head down. She had kept walking. She had told herself she hadn't seen anything. She had told herself for 2 weeks. "Oh God," Lena said. And her legs went out from under her, and Adrian Voss caught her before she hit the floor, and somewhere outside in the dark of the gravel lot, far enough from the diner that the sound was small, something that might have been a gunshot cracked once and then went quiet. The ice machine hummed. Nobody in the diner said anything. And Adrian Voss, holding a bleeding stranger in his arms in the ruin of a roadside diner in a town nobody had heard of, looked down at her face and said, very softly, to no one in particular, "Well, that changes everything." She didn't go all the way under. That was the strange part. She felt her knees give, and she felt his arm come around her back, and she felt her cheek against the wool of his coat, and the wool smelled like cedar and something darker underneath it. And through all of it, her brain kept ticking like a watch that somebody had dropped, but not broken. She was aware. She was aware of being aware. She could hear Dwight coughing on the floor behind the counter, and she could hear one of Adrian's men asking him in a perfectly calm voice whether he could move his fingers. And she could hear her own breath coming in these small, wet tears. "Easy. Easy now." Adrian's voice, close to her ear. Not soft, exactly. Steady. "I got you. Stay with me." "I'm here," she said. She meant to say it. What came out was mostly air. She tried again. "I'm here. I'm here. I'm just... I know." He lowered her into the booth. The nearest one, the one by the pass, the one where the fake leather had split along the seam 2 years ago and Margie had fixed it with black duct tape and Dwight had yelled at her for a week. Lena's hip hit the vinyl and the pain ran up her side like something alive, and she made a sound, and Adrian let her make it, and he did not pretend he hadn't heard. He didn't slide in across from her. He crouched beside the booth instead on one knee, like a man proposing. His coat pooled around him on the dirty tile. She could see the lining, dark red silk. It would never come clean of that floor. He didn't seem to know, and he didn't seem to care. Kellen. Boss. Car. On the way. 3 minutes. Make it 2. Yes, boss. The man called Kellen stepped outside. Through the glass, Lena could see him put a phone to his ear, could see his breath coming out of him in short white puffs in the cold. There was another man standing by the pumps across the lot. Big coat. Hands clasped in front of him, patient as a statue. He was looking down the road, not at the diner. Adrian turned back to her. He looked at her hand first, the left one. It was lying in her lap and it didn't look like her hand anymore. The pinky was going the wrong way. The knuckle above it was already the color of a ripe plum. May I? What? Your hand. May I look? She nodded. He didn't touch her. He leaned in and looked, his face 2 feet from hers, and he studied the hand the way a man studies a map. Then he sat back. It's broken. 2 places, maybe 3. The ribs are a bigger problem. I know. You've had broken ribs before. I know the feeling. He looked at her. Something flickered behind his eyes and then went still again. Who? What? Who broke them the first time? She almost laughed. It came up in her throat and died there, because laughing hurt too much. That's a long list, mister. Voss. Adrian. That's a long list, Adrian. He nodded, slow. He didn't ask again. He filed it somewhere. She could feel him filing it. Behind her, behind the counter, there was a wet scraping sound. Dwight was sitting up. One of Adrian's men, a smaller man with a neat black beard and gentle hands, was pressing a folded bar towel to the cook's nose. Dwight was staring at Lena over the pass with his one good eye, the other swelling shut, and when their eyes met, he did something he had never done in the 2 years she'd worked for him. He mouthed the word, sorry. She looked away first. She couldn't hold it. Where is he? She said. Who? Jesse, the one who... outside. Is he... Adrian didn't answer. He didn't have to. His face didn't change at all, and that was how she knew. Oh, she said. Does that upset you? She thought about it. She was surprised she had to think about it. A part of her was waiting for the upset to arrive, the way you wait for a cough after somebody laughs too hard. It didn't come. What came instead was nothing, a flat, quiet nothing, like a field after a fire. No. Good. He said it very simply. It shouldn't. The bell jingled. Kellen coming back in, bringing a gust of cold with him. Car's here, boss. 2 minutes on the doctor. Doctor, Lena said. I can't afford a... Lena. I don't have insurance. Lena. She stopped. He was looking at her very directly. His voice had not gone up, but something in it had sharpened. You are not going to a hospital. You are not going to your apartment. You are not going anywhere in this town tonight. Do you understand me? No. No, I don't. Then listen. He leaned in. The cedar smell again. The men who came in here tonight were not drunks. They were made to look like drunks. That is a technique. I know it because it's one I've used. They wanted a scene. They wanted witnesses to remember a fight, not a hit. They wanted the sheriff, and I assume this town has a sheriff, a useless one. They wanted the sheriff to write it up as a bar brawl that went sideways. They wanted you in a ditch by morning and a story that nobody would look past. Mishashit, I'm a waitress. I know what you are. Nobody wants to kill a waitress. Lena, somebody does. She stared at him. Outside, headlights swept across the window. A long black car, the kind you didn't see in Belmore, the kind that had never been to Belmore. It stopped in front of the diner and the engine didn't cut. The driver didn't get out. I need you to think very carefully now, Adrian said. I'm going to ask you a question, and the answer is important. It is important for you, do you understand? Yes. 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. Did you see something you were not supposed to see? Her throat closed. She thought of the rain again, the parking lot, the motel with the sign that said vacancy, and the sea flickering. She thought of the briefcase. She thought of the man's face, mostly his eyes, which had been a very pale blue, lighter than they should have been for a face like that. She had gone home, and she had locked her door, and she had drawn the chain, and then she had taken a shower with the water as hot as she could stand. And she had told herself, you didn't see a thing, Lena Cross. You just kept walking. You kept your head down, and you kept walking. Lena. The Moonlight, she said. She didn't recognize her own voice. The Moonlight Motel. Off Route 9, 2 weeks ago Tuesday. It was raining. His face didn't change, but his shoulders did. Something in them dropped a quarter inch. Not relief. Recognition. Go on. I was walking home from the diner. I cut through the lot because of the rain. There were 3 men. A car, a black car. Like that one, maybe. I don't know about cars. One of them had a briefcase. They handed it off. I saw the handoff. And one of them, the one who took it, he saw me. Describe him. Tall. Older than you. Gray suit, gray hair. But his eyes were really pale blue. I don't know, like a husky's eyes. He had a scar here. She started to raise her left hand, flinched, used her right instead, touched her own jawline below her ear. A scar down to here, thin, like a line. Adrian closed his eyes. He did not open them for a long moment. When he did, he stood up. He stood up slowly, the way a man stands up when he has just been told something that requires a great deal of him. Kellen? Yes, boss. It's him. Kellen went very still by the door. You sure? The eyes, the scar. She's describing him down to the collar. Kellen let out a breath that he had maybe been holding for a year. Christ. Yes. He's here. He's here. Kellen looked around the diner like he still couldn't quite believe the word. In Belmore. He was here. 2 weeks ago. He's probably long gone by now. Adrian's voice had gone flat, flatter than before. But he left footprints. Jessie is a footprint. The 3 outside are footprints. He looked at Lena. She is a very, very important footprint. Boss, if she can ID him, I know. I know, Kellen. Shut up a moment. Let me think. Kellen shut up. He stood by the door and he folded his hands in front of him and he waited. And Lena watched him wait. And she understood that this man, Kellen, who was maybe 40 years old and looked like he could break a wall with his shoulder, would stand there all night if Adrian Voss needed him to stand there all night. Adrian paced 2 steps. He ran his hand down his face. It was the first ungoverned thing she had seen him do. He let the hand drop and turned back to her. Lena, I'm going to tell you some things, and I'm going to tell them to you fast because we do not have time, all right? All right. The man you saw in the parking lot is not a man you were supposed to see. He's not a man most people see and walk away from. His name, the name he uses, is Sinclair. He is a banker of a very particular kind. He moves money for people who cannot be seen moving their own. Criminal money, foreign money, money that buys things you do not want to know are being bought. Okay. I have been trying to find him for 3 years. Okay. Do you understand what that means? No. It means that for 3 years, I have spent a very great deal of money and a very great deal of other things looking for a man, and tonight, by an accident I do not yet understand, a waitress in a town I had no reason to be in has just told me she knows what he looks like and where he was seen. She stared at him. What were you doing here? She said. He almost smiled. It was not a smile. It was the ghost of one, the kind of thing that runs across a face and leaves before you can say what it was. I was driving through, believe it or not. I don't blame you, but it's the truth. I stopped because one of my men wanted a cup of coffee. He glanced toward the pass. I suppose we will be tipping well. She let out a sound that was half a laugh and half something else. It caught in her ribs and she doubled forward a little, and he almost reached for her and then didn't. He held his hand back like a man who had learned somewhere, a long time ago, not to reach for a woman who was flinching. Lena, Listen. I'm listening. If the men who came for you tonight knew where to find you, then Sinclair knew. If Sinclair knew, then he remembered your face from the lot, and he had someone follow you, and he had someone ask around about you, and he decided you were a problem. He does not leave problems. Not ever. Do you understand? Yes. So there will be more of them. Yes. Tonight. Maybe in an hour. Maybe sooner. Yes. You cannot go home. You cannot go to the sheriff. You cannot go to your family. Do you have family? No. Anybody? No. He looked at her. He looked at her the way he had looked at her when he first came through the door, that measuring look, and she felt it land on her all over again. Then you are going to come with me. I don't know you. You don't. I don't know you at all. You just killed 4 men in a parking lot. I did. And I'm supposed to just... You are supposed, he said very quietly, to make the choice that keeps you alive. That is all. I am not asking you to trust me. I am telling you that if you stay in this town tonight, you die. And if you come with me, you might not. That is the entire offer. It is not a good one. I am aware. She stared at him. Her left hand was throbbing. Her right eye was closing up. Her ribs felt like somebody had pushed a hot poker between them and left it there. She thought about her apartment above the laundromat, the window that didn't quite close, the chain on the door that a man's shoulder could break in one shove. She thought about Earl the sheriff, who told her it took 2 to tango. She thought about Reggie with his meatloaf Thursdays, and she realized with a cold, flat certainty that if she went back to her apartment tonight, she would be dead by morning, and in a week, Reggie would come in for his Thursday meatloaf and ask Dwight where Lena was. And Dwight would mumble something, and Reggie would know. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, I'll come. Adrian nodded. Once, just once. He did not look relieved. She realized later that he never looked relieved about anything. Relief was a thing for other people. Kellen, help her up. I can walk, she said. I'm sure you can. Let him help anyway. Kellen came over. He was gentle. She hadn't expected a man built like that to be gentle. He got her up under the good arm, and he waited while she got her feet. The room tilted and then settled. She could feel blood drying on her face, stiff, pulling at the skin. Dwight, she said. Ma'am, said the smaller man with the beard, the one holding the towel to Dwight's nose. He'll live. Nose is broken, some teeth loose. He'll be embarrassed more than anything. I'm not embarrassed, said Dwight, thickly, through the towel. I'm mad. It was the most she'd ever heard him say at one time. Dwight, Lena, you go. Dwight, I can't just... You go. He lowered the towel. His face was a mess. His eye was the color of a storm cloud. But his good eye was fixed on hers, and it was not confused. It was not scared. It was just angry, the way a man is angry when somebody has hurt someone under his roof. These men, whoever they are, mister, whoever you are, they said she's in trouble. I believe them. I saw those boys come in. I saw how they came in. That wasn't drunk. That was something else. You take her. You get her out of here. Dwight, I'll tell Earl what I saw. Earl won't. I'll tell him what I saw, Lena. He can do with it what he wants. Adrian glanced at the little bearded man. The bearded man understood something without being told. He said, Sir, we'll make sure tonight is logged as a robbery. 5 men came through, took the till, assaulted you both, fled. You didn't see plates. You don't remember faces real well on account of the concussion. I don't have a concussion. You do now, sir. Dwight looked at him a long second. Then he nodded. Fine. And sir, there'll be a doctor here in 5 minutes for you too. I don't need a... There'll be a doctor here in 5 minutes for you too. Dwight looked at the bearded man, then at Adrian, then at Lena. His jaw worked. Fine. Adrian inclined his head. Thank you. Don't thank me. She's a good girl. You hurt her? I'll find you. It should have been funny. An old cook with a broken nose threatening a man who had just unmade 4 people in 30 seconds. Nobody laughed. Adrian just looked at Dwight and said very quietly, Understood. And Lena, caught between them, with Kellen's hand under her arm and her ribs on fire, and her left hand going numb in a bad way, felt something tear loose in her chest that she had not known was stuck there. She didn't cry. She was not going to cry in this room tonight, but she made a sound very small and she said, "Dwight, go on, kid, go." They walked her out. The cold hit her like a second beating. She hadn't had time to grab her coat. Her apron was still on. She was aware of that very suddenly, the stupid apron with the embroidered H on the pocket, blood on the hem. She half reached to untie it and Adrian said, "Leave it, there isn't time." The car was bigger up close. It had the long, low shape of a car built to carry people who mattered, and the windows were dark, and the engine was running in that quiet, expensive way that expensive cars have. A driver in the front. A second car behind it she hadn't seen from inside. Two men already on foot in the lot, one by the road and one at the back corner, both of them turned outward, watching the dark. Between the cars, on the gravel, there were no bodies. There was only a patch of gravel that had been raked. The rake marks were still fresh. Lena looked at the raked gravel. She looked at the raked gravel for a long time. "Don't," Adrian said beside her. "I'm not. Don't." She looked away. Kellen helped her into the back seat. The leather was warm. Somebody had turned the heat on in advance. There was a bottle of water in the cup holder and a folded cashmere blanket on the seat next to her. She stared at the blanket as if it were an artifact from another planet. She did not pick it up. Adrian came in the other door on the far side. He sat down without looking at her. He said one word to the driver, "Go." And the car eased out of the gravel lot and onto the main road. And the diner and its warm yellow windows and the ice machine's hum and Dwight's bleeding face slid away behind them, and the dark of the road swallowed them up. For a long time, nobody spoke. Lena watched the road go by. The road she had walked home on 200 nights. The laundromat where she lived above. Its sign off for the night. The window of her apartment upstairs dark. Dark because she was not in it. Dark because if she had been in it tonight, in 1 hour, in 2, it would not have stayed dark. She understood this with her whole body. She watched her apartment slide past, and she didn't look back. "Your hand," she startled. She had forgotten he was there. That was stupid. You couldn't forget he was there. He made the inside of a car different just by being in it. "My hand. Hold it up, above your heart." "Why?" "Slows the swelling." She did it. It hurt in a new way. She kept doing it. He looked out his own window. The lights of the road moved across his face in stripes. He looked tired, she realized. Not exhausted. Tired the way a man is tired who has been tired for years and has stopped expecting to stop. "How old are you, Lena Cross?" 24. 24. He repeated it quietly to himself. "Parents?" "Mother's dead, father's, I don't know, somewhere." "Siblings?" "No." "Boyfriend?" "No." "Ex-boyfriend?" "Adrian." He glanced at her, the ghost of that smile again. Gone again. "Forgive me. Old habits. I'm used to mapping people quickly." "Why?" "Because people are how you get to other people." She thought about that. It made sense to her in a way she wished it didn't. "Do you have anyone who will look for you in the morning?" "Dwight." Besides Dwight, she thought. She really thought. She thought of the name of a girl from high school who was married now and lived 2 towns over, and whose Christmas card she still got, but she hadn't written back in 3 years. She thought of a professor at the community college she'd done a semester at, who had told her she was smart and that she should come back. She thought of Reggie in his booth. "No," she said. "All right." That's a sad answer. It's a useful one. She looked at him. "Useful for you or useful for me?" He looked back at her. For a long second, he did not answer. Then he said, "Both." "That is the honest answer, Lena. Both." She nodded, slowly. "Where are we going?" "My house." "Your house." "My house. It is about an hour from here. There is a doctor there. There is a nurse who lives on the grounds. There is a room you can have for as long as you need it, and the door will have a lock on the inside. And I will give you the key, and nobody will come through that door without you opening it. Do you understand me?" "Yes." "I'm telling you this very precisely because I want there to be no confusion about what kind of protection this is. You don't want me scared of you. I don't want you scared of me the wrong way. A little fear is healthy. A woman in your position should be afraid of every man she meets, including me. But not that kind of afraid. That kind of afraid makes you jump at shadows and miss the real knife when it comes. You talk, she said, like someone who has seen a lot of real knives. I have. She watched his profile against the window, the silver at his temples, the line of his jaw, which was not a soft line. He had the face of a man who had been hit before, and hit often, but a long time ago, so the damage had healed into something hard and smooth and unreadable. Adrian. Yes. What do you do for a living? He considered the question. He considered it long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. I run a family, he said, finally. A business family. It has existed for a long time, longer than I have. When I inherited it, it was a certain kind of thing. Over the last 15 years, I have tried, slowly, to make it a different kind of thing. Not a clean thing. I will not lie to you, but a different thing. A mafia. That is a word people use. Do you use it? No, we have our own words. Are they nicer? No, they're just ours. She laughed, short and hurt. She winced because of her ribs, but she laughed anyway. He looked at her, and for the second time she saw that ghost of something, and this time she understood what it was. He was surprised by her. He had expected her to cry or to scream or to fall apart or to beg. She had done none of those things. She was sitting in the back seat of his car with a broken hand and a closed eye and probably 3 cracked ribs, and she was asking him questions like they were 2 strangers on a train. You're not afraid of me, he said. It was not a question. I'm terrified of you, she said. I just don't have the strength to show it. That finally pulled a real expression across his face. It wasn't quite a smile. It was something closer. It was the face of a man who had just learned something he had not expected to learn tonight, and who was deciding, right there in the back of the car, what to do with it. Lean across. What? Drink your water. She looked at the bottle in the cup holder. She picked it up with her good hand. It took her 3 tries to unscrew the cap because her fingers kept slipping on the plastic. He did not offer to help. He watched her do it and let her do it, and when she finally got the cap off, she understood that he had watched her do it on purpose, because he knew, somehow he already knew, that if he'd taken it from her, even to be kind, she'd have hated him for it. She drank. It was cold, and it hurt her cut lip, and it was the best water she'd ever had in her life. The road went on. Trees on either side now, the diner long behind them. She didn't know this road. She had never been this far out of Belmore. She'd never had a reason to go. Adrian. Yes. The man, Sinclair. Why do you want him? He was quiet for a while. The lights moved across his face. He killed my brother, Adrian said. She looked at him. I'm sorry. Don't be. My brother was not a good man. He did not deserve to die the way he died, but he did not deserve much else either. He turned his head to look at her, and his eyes in the dim of the back seat were a color she could not name. I do not want Sinclair out of love, Lena. I want him because a man like that, a man who can make my brother disappear in a night, is a man who can make anyone disappear in a night. And there are people I would like very much not to disappear. Who? Me, for one. She almost laughed again. She didn't. She could tell he wasn't joking. And you think I can help you get to him? I know you can. Because I can ID him. But because you can do more than that. You saw a handoff. You saw the car. You saw the lot. You saw the time. I have pieces, Lena. I have a great many pieces. I did not have the one piece that puts a face at a place at a time. Now I do. He paused. You are a witness. That is what you are. That is a very dangerous thing to be. But it is also a very valuable thing, and I protect what is valuable to me. That's not romantic. I wasn't being romantic. Good. He almost smiled again. She looked out the window. Her own reflection looked back at her, and she flinched. Her face didn't look like her face. Half of it was red-purple already, the eye a slit, her lips split down the middle and swollen out of its shape. A stranger. She looked like a stranger. She stared at the stranger, and the stranger stared back, and Lena Cross, 24 of Belmore, thought, you are not her anymore. She got left in that diner. She isn't coming with you. Lena. Yeah. Close your eyes. I can't. Try. Every time I close them, I know, try anyway. You have about 40 minutes before we arrive, and I need you to have something in you besides pain when we get there. Close your eyes. She closed them. She saw Jesse's face. She opened them. She closed them. She saw the raked gravel. She opened them. Adrian? Yes, Lena. Talk. About what? Anything. I don't care. Just talk. Something with a voice in it. I can't. The quiet. All right. And Adrian Voss, a man who by his own admission ran a family that had a word for itself that wasn't mafia. A man who had walked into a diner and changed the geometry of 4 lives in under a minute. A man whose lap robe of a cashmere blanket on the seat beside her cost more than her monthly rent. Adrian Voss started to tell her, in his quiet, low voice, about a house. About a house an hour away, at the end of a long gravel road, with iron gates and oak trees and a pond that froze over in January and that he had skated on, badly, when he was 9 years old. About a cook there named Mrs. Ansell, who had been with the family for 31 years and who made a tomato soup that could, he said, bring a dead man back. About a garden his mother had planted before she got sick, and a library with a ladder on rails, and a dog, a big old mongrel named Joe, whom the staff had rescued from a culvert and whom Adrian, despite repeated attempts to remain dignified, had come to love. He told her about the house as the car ate miles of dark road. He didn't pretty it up. He mentioned that the gates had cameras, that there were men on the grounds at all hours, that the windows in the east wing were bulletproof and had been since 2017. He laid it out the way a man lays out a floor plan, not a fairy tale, and somehow the unprettiness of it was the thing that let her, finally, close her eyes and keep them closed. She didn't sleep. She floated. She listened to his voice, and she listened to the tires, and she listened to the small ache of her own breathing, and she did not think about the diner, and she did not think about the raked gravel, and she did not, for a little while, think about the pale-eyed man at the Moonlight Motel who had looked across 40 feet of wet asphalt and decided she should die. Somewhere in that floating, she heard him say her name again, very softly, the way a person says a name they are trying to remember the shape of. Lena Cross. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't answer. And Adrian Voss, in the dark of the back seat, with a waitress bleeding quietly beside him and his brother's killer's face finally within reach. After 3 years of nothing, looked out at the road unspooling in the headlights and understood, with the particular clarity that came to him sometimes in cars at night, that the woman next to him was not going to be a tool he used and discarded. He understood it the way a man understands weather. He did not know yet what she was going to be. But he knew what she was not going to be, and that for Adrian Voss was already more than he had known about anything in a very long time. The car turned off the main road. Gravel crunched under the tires. Somewhere ahead, in the dark, iron gates began to open. The gates were black iron and older than the driveway, and they opened without a sound. Lena heard the gravel change under the tires, from the loose, coarse stuff of the county road to something finer and rolled flat. The car slowed. A man stepped out of a small stone guardhouse on the right side of the drive, looked once at the driver, nodded, and stepped back into the dark. He did not look at the back seat. Lena understood, somehow, that this was a kindness, that the men on these grounds were trained not to look at whoever the boss brought home in the back of a car at 2 a.m, that there had, in all likelihood, been other people in other back seats on other nights. She did not know why that thought didn't upset her as much as it should have. The drive went on longer than she expected. The headlights caught trunks of oaks, one after another, their bark pale in the beam, a white fence on the left, a low hill on the right. Then a turn, and the house came up out of the dark all at once, bigger than she'd braced for, 2 stories of old brick with the lights burning soft yellow behind a dozen windows. Somebody had turned the lights on for them. Somebody had known they were coming. "Stay put a second," Adrian said. She hadn't been planning to move. Her body had stopped taking suggestions from her brain about 20 minutes back. She just nodded. The car rolled to a stop under a stone portico. The driver cut the engine. Kellen was already out of the passenger seat, moving around the hood, and another man, older, 50s maybe, in a dark suit with no tie, was coming down the 3 stone steps from the front door. He moved like a man who had been waiting up. Adrian got out first. He said something to the older man that Lena didn't catch. The older man listened, nodded twice, and turned his head to look in through the window at her. His eyes went over her face, and his jaw tightened, and he looked away, fast, the way a decent man looks away from a woman who has just been hurt. "Doctor's in the east sitting room," she heard him say. "Mrs. Ansell made broth. Room's ready. I put her in the blue one." "Good. Thank you, Henry." "Of course, sir." Adrian came around to her side of the car and opened her door. The cold came in. He didn't reach for her. "Can you walk?" "I can walk." "Lena." "I can walk." He stepped back. He let her. She swung her legs out one at a time, and she planted her good hand on the doorframe, and she stood up, and the world grayed out at the edges for a second and then came back. She did not fall. She was almost proud of it, in a stupid, distant way. Look at that. Still standing, still a person. Henry, the older man, did not hover. He kept his distance. He held the front door open and stepped aside as she came up the steps, Adrian a half-pace behind her, Kellen another half-pace behind him. She had the sense of being walked through a door that was not going to close behind her the same way again. The foyer was bigger than her entire apartment. She noticed that, and then she noticed she was noticing it, and she almost laughed. Dark wood floors, a staircase curving up on the right, a long rug the color of old wine, a chandelier she didn't look up at because looking up was going to make her throw up. The house smelled like wood smoke and something warm from the kitchen, soup or bread, something with salt in it, and her stomach turned over and she realized she had not eaten since noon and that she was not going to be eating any time soon because her mouth was full of blood and broken places. "This way, miss." Henry's voice, gentle, not calling her ma'am, not calling her Miss Cross. Just miss. The way you'd say it to any woman you didn't want to name out loud. She appreciated that and didn't know why. He led her through an archway on the left, down a short hall lined with old photographs she didn't look at, and into a sitting room that had been set up clearly and on purpose as a triage. The long sofa had been pushed back and a leather armchair had been pulled forward and draped with a white sheet. A folding metal table stood beside it with a black medical bag already open, clean towels, a basin, a kettle on a warmer. Good lighting, clinical lighting. Somebody had wheeled in a lamp from somewhere else. A woman was waiting. She was maybe 50, small, with graying hair pinned back hard, and she had the kind of face Lena recognized from every ER she had ever sat in as a kid with her mother. A nurse's face. The face of a woman who had seen too much, a long time ago, and had decided to keep showing up anyway. "Lena, this is Ruth," Adrian said. "She was a trauma nurse for 22 years before she came to work for me. Dr. Marsh will look at you too, but I want her with you the whole time." Ruth came forward 2 steps. She didn't smile. Lena was grateful she didn't smile. A smile right now would have been the wrong thing. "Honey, my name's Ruth. I'm going to touch you now. I'm going to touch your shoulder first, and then I'm going to put my hand under your elbow and help you sit in that chair. That okay?" "Okay." She did exactly what she said she was going to do, in the order she said she was going to do it. Nothing surprising, nothing sudden. Lena sat. The chair was deep and the sheet was cool, and she felt her weight go into it like water. A man came in from another door. Late 40s, rumpled, with half-moon glasses pushed up into gray hair. A doctor's bag and a tie that had clearly been knotted in a car. He nodded to Adrian, and Adrian nodded back. He came over and crouched in front of the chair, and he didn't introduce himself, because Ruth already had, by saying his name over her shoulder to Lena as he walked in. "Dr. Marsh." "Evan." "He's good, honey." "Lena," he said, "I'm going to ask you a lot of annoying questions, and then I'm going to touch you a lot. Is there anywhere you particularly don't want me to touch?" "My left hand is bad." "I see that." "My ribs." "Which side?" "Both. Right's worse." "Head injury?" "I hit the wall." "Which side of your head?" "Left." "Lose consciousness?" I don't think so. Maybe for a second." "How long a second?" "I don't know." "Okay. Good enough." "Any nausea?" "A little." "Vision?" "Everything's a little fuzzy, right eye's shut, left eye's okay." "Pregnant?" "No." "You sure?" "I'm sure." "Okay." He looked up at Adrian just once, a short, flat look. Adrian was standing by the doorway with his hands in his coat pockets and his face doing that empty thing it did. Adrian nodded, a small nod, and then he did something Lena didn't expect. He left. He stepped back out through the doorway and closed the door behind him, and she heard his footsteps go down the hall, and she understood that he had done it because a strange woman with a broken hand and cracked ribs and her uniform still on did not need him watching while a doctor put his hands on her. She felt something move in her chest that she could not name, and she pushed it down because she did not have time for it. Ruth was kneeling at her left side now, scissors in one hand. "Honey, I'm going to cut your sleeve. Your uniform's gone. It's done, okay? Okay? You tell me if anything hurts more than you expect. Okay?" The scissors went up her sleeve in one long, careful stroke. Dr. Marsh was on her right, his fingers very gentle on her ribs through the fabric, and he said things to her as he went. "Okay, deep breath if you can. That's fine. Just a half breath. Good." And she answered when she could and stayed quiet when she couldn't. Somewhere in the middle of it, Ruth put a plastic bite guard in her mouth and said, "For the hand, honey, you're going to want it." And when Dr. Marsh set her pinky back into place, Lena bit down on the guard so hard she heard her own teeth grind, and her vision went red and then white, and then back to the lamp above her, and she did not scream. And she was weirdly proud of that too, and then Ruth was saying, "Good, good, okay, done with that part," and was already wrapping the hand. The ribs were just cracked. 2 of them. The right side, 5th and 6th. Nothing punctured. The x-ray machine, which it turned out was in a room down the hall, because of course it was, confirmed it. The orbital bone under her right eye was bruised, but not broken. There was a hairline split in her lip that Dr. Marsh closed with 2 small, careful stitches. There was a gash on her scalp under her hair that she hadn't even known about until Ruth found it while washing the blood out. And that one took 4 stitches, and Lena cried for the first time all night when Ruth washed her hair in a basin, not because it hurt, but because nobody had washed her hair for her since she was a child, and she had not been ready for how much her body was going to react to someone else's hands in it being kind. Ruth didn't say anything about the crying. She just kept washing, gently, and when Lena tried to apologize, Ruth said, "Don't you dare, honey. Don't you dare apologize for that." By the time it was done, it was almost 4 in the morning. She was in a clean, soft gray sweatshirt that someone had produced from somewhere, and sweatpants that were too big, and thick socks. And her left hand was in a short fiberglass cast from the knuckles to past the wrist, and her ribs were taped under the sweatshirt, and there was a bottle of water and a prescription bottle and a glass of something hot and salty on a tray beside her. "Broth," Ruth said. "Mrs. Ansell's. Sip it, don't gulp." "I don't think I can eat." "I didn't ask you to eat, I asked you to sip." She sipped. It went down hot and thin, and it tasted like her grandmother's kitchen, somebody's grandmother's kitchen, somewhere a long time ago. She had not had a grandmother. She sipped anyway. Dr. Marsh was packing up his bag. He paused at the door. "Lena." "Yeah." "You're tougher than you look." "People keep saying that tonight." "Keep not making a liar out of them." He went. Ruth stayed. Ruth was going to stay, she understood, for the rest of the night, in a chair in the corner or just outside the door, because Adrian Voss had asked her to, and because Ruth was the kind of woman who would have done it anyway, even if he hadn't. There was a knock at the door, 2 soft raps. Lena looked up. Ruth looked up. "It's me," Adrian said from the other side. Not coming in, waiting. "Come in," Lena said. He came in. He had taken off the overcoat. The suit underneath was dark charcoal, the shirt white, no tie, the top button undone. His hair was a little mussed at the temple like he had run a hand through it. He looked, for the first time since she had met him, like a man who had been up all night. He stopped just inside the door. He did not come closer than he had to. "How is she?" "She's going to be fine, Mr. Voss." Ruth had a different voice when she spoke to him. Not stiff, not scared, respectful. The way a professional speaks to a patron she has chosen to respect. "Cracked ribs, broken hand, concussion grade 2, lacerations, contusions, nothing that won't heal. She'll be sore for a month, truly sore for 2 weeks." "Good. She needs sleep." "I know." He looked at Lena. "Lena." "Yeah. Your room is upstairs. Henry will walk you up. Ruth will be with you. The door locks from the inside. Nobody comes through unless you say. If you need anything in the night, there's a button next to the bed. Press it. Someone will answer. Okay. I won't be there in the morning. I have to leave for a few hours. Ruth will be, Mrs. Ansell will be, Henry will be, Kellen will be in the house. You're going somewhere. I am. Where? He hesitated. It was the first time he had hesitated at a question. I'm going to look at something, he said. Somewhere you told me about. She understood. Her throat closed. The motel. The motel. Adrian. If he's still there. He's not. I know he isn't. I still need to look. She nodded. She understood that too. In a way she wished she didn't. She'd spent her whole life understanding things she wished she didn't. Okay? Sleep. Okay. He stood there another second. Then he did something she did not expect. He came all the way into the room, stopped about 4 feet from her chair, and he crouched again like he had in the diner, on one knee so that his face was lower than hers. It was deliberate. She saw it for what it was. He did not want to be a tall man standing over her in a strange room at 4 a.m. He had thought about that. Lena. Yeah. I know this is not the deal you wanted. I didn't have a deal. I know. I was just getting off shift. I know. I was going to go home and take a shower and watch TV and sleep, and tomorrow I was going to... I don't even know what I was going to do tomorrow. I was going to work my shift. I was going to walk home. I was going to... Her voice broke. She did not cry again, but her voice broke. He waited. He did not fill the silence. I was going to be me, she said. You still are. I don't feel like it. You will. When? I don't know. It takes as long as it takes. I can tell you this. You get to decide what the next version of you looks like. Tonight took some things from you. It did not take that. She looked at him. He looked back at her. His eyes were very steady. Adrian. Yes. If you're lying to me about any of this, any of it, I want you to know that I will find a way to make you regret it. He did not smile. He did not even almost smile. He nodded once, very seriously. Understood. Okay. Sleep. He stood. He went to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. One more thing. What? There is a phone in your room, a landline. I asked them to put it there. If you decide in the night that you want to call the sheriff or a reporter or a friend or anyone, you can. I am not going to take that from you. I am asking you not to because it will make things harder, but I am not going to take it from you. You'd really let me? Yes. Why? Because if I had to lock you in to keep you, I'd have already lost. He went out. The door clicked closed behind him. Ruth, who had not pretended to not hear any of that, gave Lena a small, dry smile. Come on, honey, upstairs. The blue room was at the end of the upstairs hall, east wing, as Henry had said. The walls were a soft, dusty blue that wasn't a little girl's blue and wasn't a hotel's blue. A real color somebody had chosen on purpose. A 4-poster bed with white linens turned down. A fireplace with a low fire banked in it. Heavy curtains drawn. A writing desk. A chair. A door to a bathroom of her own. And Lana did not know what to do with a bathroom of her own. She had shared a bathroom with her mother and then a bathroom down a hall with 8 other students for a semester, and then a bathroom in a studio apartment that counted as her kitchen too. She sat on the edge of the bed. Ruth put the water and the pills on the nightstand and showed her the button and the phone and the lock on the door and told her she would be in the chair in the hallway for the next 3 hours, and then Mrs. Ansell would relieve her and that she should not be embarrassed to press the button for any reason at all, and that there was a nightlight in the bathroom, and that if she needed to throw up, which was possible, with the concussion, the basin was on the left side of the bed. Lena sat and she listened and she nodded when she was supposed to nod. Ruth. Honey, thank you. You don't thank me, sweetheart. I'm thanking you anyway. Ruth didn't argue. She squeezed Lena's shoulder, the left one, the uninjured one, and she went out, and the door closed, and Lena heard her slide into a chair in the hall. The house was quiet, not silent. A house like this was never silent. Somewhere downstairs something ticked. Somewhere further a boiler clicked on. Outside wind moved in the oaks. Lena got up. She did it slowly. She walked to the door and she turned the deadbolt, and she heard it settle. and she stood there with her good hand on the cold brass of it, and she made herself feel the weight of the lock. He said I could. He said it, and he meant it. She went back to the bed. She didn't pull the covers down further. She climbed on top of them, and she lay on her back, carefully, the way Dr. Marsh had showed her, her bound hand on her chest, and she stared up at the ceiling. She did not sleep. Not for a long time. She thought about the way Jesse's hand had closed on her wrist. She thought about the quiet one, Marcus, and the way he had said Jesse. Man, enough. She wondered what Marcus's mother called him. She wondered if his mother was alive. She wondered if his mother would ever know, or if she would just spend the rest of her life calling his phone and wondering why it went straight to voicemail. She thought about the raked gravel. She thought about Reggie. And somewhere in there, in the not-quite sleep that came at her in waves, she thought about the pale-eyed man at the Moonlight Motel. She tried to remember more than she had told Adrian. She made herself. She closed her eyes and she put herself back in the rain, back under the streetlight with the yellow bulb. And she walked through it step by step, with the cold attention of a person who had finally been given permission to look at the thing she had spent 2 weeks refusing to look at. He had been wearing gloves. Leather gloves. Thin. The expensive kind. There had been a second car she hadn't mentioned. A sedan, further down the lot, engine running, exhaust ghosting in the rain. A driver in it. The driver had been looking right at her. She had looked away too fast to see his face, but she had seen his silhouette, the shape of his head, and she remembered now that he had been wearing some kind of earpiece, because there had been a little curl of wire at the back of his ear catching the light. She hadn't told Adrian that. She hadn't remembered it until now. She sat up, carefully, in the dark of the blue room, and she stared at the banked orange of the fire, and she understood that she had just added a detail to the picture, and that the picture was going to keep adding details for as long as she kept her eyes open in a safe, dark room. She picked up the phone on the nightstand, the landline. She held it in her hand. She thought about calling the sheriff. She thought about calling a reporter. She thought about what either of those calls would actually accomplish tonight, with her hand in a cast and her face the color of a bruise and no proof of anything except a story a waitress was telling about a parking lot 2 weeks ago. She put the phone down. She lay back on the pillows. And for the first time since the bell over the diner door had rung a second time, for the first time since she had spit blood in Jesse Holland's face, Lena Cross let her body understand that it was, for this one night, not going to be killed. She cried then, quietly, into the pillow. She cried for about 10 minutes, and then she stopped, and she wiped her face with the back of her good hand, and she breathed, and the breathing hurt her ribs, and the hurt was a real hurt in a real body, in a real bed, in a real room with a real lock, and that was, somehow, the thing she finally held on to. She slept. She slept badly, and she slept in pieces. And she woke at 6:30 when the gray first came through the curtains, and she woke at 7:20 when a car crunched down the drive outside. Adrian's, she would find out later, heading to the motel. And she woke again at 9 when Mrs. Ansell knocked softly and said through the door, "Miss Lena, honey, I'll leave a tray out here. You come get it when you want it. No hurry. No hurry at all." And she lay there listening to the footsteps go back down the hall, and she thought, I have never been called Miss Lena by anybody in my life. She got up at 10. She was stiff in ways she had not known a body could be stiff. She shuffled to the door and opened it, and there was a tray on a little folding table. Toast, eggs, a pot of tea, a small vase with a single stem of something green in it that wasn't a flower but was pretty anyway, a sprig of rosemary maybe. Somebody had put a sprig of rosemary on her breakfast tray. She brought the tray in. She ate the toast. She drank the tea. She did not cry over the rosemary, which was an achievement. At 11, Ruth knocked again and changed the dressing on her scalp, and looked at her pupils with the little light, and asked her the annoying doctor questions again. What day is it? Who is the president? Count backward from 100 by sevens. And Lena got the president wrong by 1, and Ruth laughed out loud, the first laugh Lena had heard in the house, and said, "Honey, half the country gets that one wrong on purpose," and made a note on her clipboard. At 12, a man Lena hadn't met yet, a quiet, skinny kid with a tablet, mid-20s, nervous eyes, came to the door with Henry and asked if she would be willing to look at some photographs. Just photographs. On a screen. No pressure, no time limit. Mr. Voss had said she was not to be pushed. He just wanted to know if any of these faces meant anything to her. She said yes. Henry brought a chair and set it beside the bed. The kid, his name was Teo, she learned, and he had an accent she couldn't quite place, set the tablet on a little stand and started swiping, face after face, some in suits, some in bad lighting, some in what looked like surveillance footage, some obituary photos. He was watching her face, not the screen. She shook her head. She shook her head. She shook her head. On the 41st picture, she stopped breathing. Teo saw it. He paused his finger above the screen. This one? She couldn't make words come. She nodded. You're sure? She nodded. Take your time, miss. I need you to say it. That's him. The man at the motel. That's him. Teo looked at the photo himself then, for the first time since he had started, and she saw his face change. Not a lot. A tightening around the eyes. He had not known, she realized, which picture in his deck was the picture. Adrian had not told him. Adrian had wanted her to find it on her own, clean, no prompting. Okay, Teo said softly. Okay, miss. Thank you. Thank you. Who is he, mate? Teo hesitated. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to, Teo. Miss. Who is he? Teo looked at Henry. Henry looked back at him, and then he looked at Lena, and then he looked at the screen. Miss, Henry said. His name is Vincent Sinclair. He is the man Mr. Voss is going to kill. Teo winced. Henry didn't. Lena sat with that for a long moment. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay. Close the tablet, please. Teo closed the tablet. He and Henry left together. Henry, at the door, turned back. Miss, you did a very brave thing just now. I've worked for Mr. Voss for 29 years. I have seen a great many people look at that picture over the years. Most of them look at the wrong face first because they're afraid. You didn't. I was afraid. I know you were. He closed the door. Lena sat on the edge of the bed for a long time after that, staring at her bound left hand, which did not look like her hand anymore, which looked like the hand of somebody else. Somebody who had chosen to stop being a waitress in Belmore last night and had not yet chosen what she was going to be instead. She lay back down eventually. She slept again. She slept for real this time, a proper heavy sleep, a sleep that her body had been saving up for years and had finally, against all odds, been given a room safe enough to spend. When she woke, it was almost dark outside again, and there was a new tray on the table by the door, and there was a low, quiet voice somewhere down the hall. Adrian's voice. She recognized it even through the wood. And Adrian was home, and Adrian was talking to somebody in a tone she had not heard him use before, a tone that was not calm at all. She slid off the bed and she went to the door and she opened it 2 inches and she listened. You're telling me the room was cleaned? Yes, sir. Professionally cleaned. Yes, sir. Industrial. They pulled the carpet. They replaced the mattress. Adrian, they repainted. When? Manager thinks a week ago, maybe 8 days. He doesn't remember. He said a man gave him $5,000 in cash and told him to take a vacation, and he did. Of course he did. A long exhale. Adrian's footsteps moving down the hall, stopping. So we have nothing. We have her? Silence. A long silence. Then Adrian very quietly, Yes, we have her. The footsteps moved away. A door closed downstairs. Lena stood behind her own cracked door with her good hand on the jamb, and she listened to the house settle around the news that the only physical evidence had been burned out of a motel room 8 days ago, and she understood, all the way through, that she was the evidence now. That her memory was the only copy. That the pale-eyed man in the picture, the one Henry had named out loud to her face without blinking, had already started erasing the world behind him, and that the only thing he had not yet reached was her. She closed the door. She turned the deadbolt. She went to the phone on the nightstand, and she looked at it for a very long time, and then she picked it up, and she did not dial the sheriff. She did not dial a reporter. She did not dial anyone at all. She just held the receiver in her good hand, and she listened to the dial tone, the small, steady hum of a line that went out into a world that did not know yet what she knew, and she set the receiver back down gently. And she went to the window, and she pulled the curtain back an inch, and she looked out at the dark of the oaks. Somewhere in that dark, a man was still out there, who had sent 4 other men to break her face into the floor of a diner. And for the first time in her life, Lena Cross was not alone in being afraid of him. That was not the same as being safe. She knew the difference. She watched the oaks move in the wind, and she stood at the window of a room that did not belong to her, in a house that did not belong to her, in a life that had stopped belonging to her about 16 hours ago, and she made herself a small, quiet promise in the dark. She wasn't going to be hidden. She wasn't going to be a secret kept in a blue room until somebody else was done settling somebody else's account. If her face was the only copy left, then her face was going to be the one that walked into whatever room this ended in. Not a photograph, not a statement through a lawyer. Her. She didn't know yet how she was going to tell Adrian Voss that, but she knew she was going to. Downstairs, a door opened and closed again, and a car started somewhere out on the drive, and the wind moved in the oaks, and the blue room held her, for one more night, in the last quiet it was going to have. She told him the next morning. She didn't ambush him. She asked Henry, over breakfast in the blue room, if she could speak with Mr. Voss when he had a minute, and Henry said, "Of course, miss, he'll be in the library at 10. And Lena finished her tea and took the pills Ruth had set out for her and dressed herself. Slowly, one-handed, the soft gray sweatshirt again because pulling anything over her head was still an event. And at 5 minutes to 10, she walked down the curving staircase with her good hand on the rail and her bound hand held carefully against her stomach. Henry was waiting in the foyer. He didn't offer an arm. He let her come down on her own. He had understood something about her already that most people took weeks to understand, and she was grateful for it. "The library is this way, miss." It was on the opposite side of the house from the sitting room where Dr. Marsh had worked on her. Long hall, wainscoting, more photographs she still didn't look at. Double doors, oak, one of them standing open. Henry stopped outside and didn't go in. "Press the little brass button on the wall inside if you need anything. I'll be in the kitchen." "Thank you, Henry." "Miss." She went in. The library was smaller than she had expected and warmer. 2 walls of books, floor to ceiling, with the rolling ladder Adrian had told her about on one of them. A fireplace with a real fire going, not a gas thing. 2 leather chairs pulled up toward it, and between them a low table with a coffee service on a tray. Adrian was in the far chair. He had a folder open on his knee and a pen in his hand and a pair of reading glasses Lena hadn't seen before low on his nose. He looked up when she came in and he took the glasses off immediately, like they embarrassed him, which almost made her laugh. "Lena, come in. Sit." "Thank you." She sat. The chair swallowed her. She arranged herself carefully, good hand on the arm, bound hand in her lap. "Coffee? Please." He poured it himself. He didn't ring a bell, didn't call anybody. He poured her coffee, and he asked how she took it, and she said, "Just a little milk." And he put in just a little milk, and he handed the cup across the little table. His hand was steady, hers wasn't. She set the cup down on the arm of the chair and left it there for a second until her hand stopped shaking, and he pretended not to notice, and she was grateful for that too. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes. Before you start, there's something I need to tell you." "Okay?" "Teo showed you a picture yesterday." "Yes." "You identified Sinclair?" "Yes." "We burned that picture last night." She blinked at him. "What?" "The picture Teo showed you, the file he was in. The whole file. We burned it. Teo doesn't remember which picture you pointed at because I told him not to remember, and Teo is very good at not remembering. Henry remembers. I remember. You remember. That's the list." "Why?" "Because if anyone ever takes this house, Lena, and it is not impossible that someone will try, I want that face out of the building. Sinclair does not exist here. He exists in our heads. That's all." She thought about that for a long moment. "That's why Henry told me his name." "What?" "Last night, when I asked. Henry told me his name, Vincent Sinclair. He told me to my face." Adrian's jaw worked, just once. She was learning that tell. Henry should not have done that. "Don't get mad at Henry." "I'm not going to get mad at Henry. Henry has been with my family since before I could read. Henry does what he thinks is right, and he is right about it 94% of the time. In this case, he was wrong. You did not need that name." "I did, though." "Lena. Adrian." He stopped. He looked at her. He sat back in his chair a little. "That's what I came to tell you," she said. "Go on. I'm not going to sit in that blue room for 6 weeks while you go erase a man I can describe. I'm not going to be a piece of information in your house. If my face is the only thing he hasn't cleaned up yet, then my face is the thing that ends this, and I want to be in the room when it does. I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know what you do or how you do it, but I am not going to be kept, Adrian, not by him and not by you. I'll help. I want to help, but I'm not going to be a secret in somebody's attic. She had rehearsed it in her head. It came out rougher than she'd rehearsed. Her voice cracked once in the middle. She didn't care. He looked at her for a long time. He didn't argue. He didn't reassure her. He didn't tell her she was brave, which she would have hated. What he did was nod, once, slowly, and then he set his folder down on the little table beside his chair, and he leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and his hands loose between them, and he said, "Okay. Okay. Okay, tell me what you think you can do. I'll tell you what I think I need. We'll meet in the middle." Just like that. Just like that. You're not going to tell me no. I could tell you no. He almost smiled. You do it anyway. She let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. She picked up the coffee cup and drank some, and the coffee was very good, better than any coffee she had ever had. And she would learn later that it came from a place in the city that roasted twice a week and delivered to the house by hand, and that Mrs. Ansell had very strong opinions about the grind. "Tell me what you know," she said. "All of it. Don't edit." He looked at her another second, then he did. He told her about Sinclair. How Sinclair had started as a commercial banker in the Midwest, somewhere outside Chicago, and had moved east 20 years ago. How he had spent the first decade of his career making himself useful to one particular family, not Adrian's, and the second decade of his career making himself indispensable to several. How Sinclair was not a member of any organization, technically. He was an independent contractor, a hinge, a man through whom money moved from places that wanted the money out into places that wanted the money clean. He was careful. He did not leave friends. He did not leave enemies if he could help it. He had survived 3 federal investigations and 2 internal purges at 3 different organizations, and he had done it by being the man who was too useful to kill, because if you killed him, the money stopped moving for 6 months, and you lost a great deal more than one man was worth. "Until my brother," Adrian said. "Your brother." "My brother's name was Sasha. He was 5 years younger than me. He was not like me. He was louder. He was hungrier. He wanted things fast. I loved him the way you love a brother who is going to be a problem for you your whole life, and who is your blood anyway, and who you cannot stop loving no matter what he does." Yeah, Sasha decided 3 years ago that he was going to go around Sinclair. He was going to build his own channel, his own money movement. He thought he could do it cheaper. I told him he couldn't. He didn't listen. He rarely listened. He set up a parallel operation in a city Sinclair considered his. Sinclair tolerated it for about 4 months, which was generous. When he stopped tolerating it, Sasha disappeared on a Thursday evening between leaving a restaurant and getting into his car, and 3 days later what we had of him turned up in a shipping container in a port 2 states away. Not all of him. Enough of him that we had to cremate what we had and tell our mother that there had been a car accident and bury an urn. He said it flat. No ornament. The way a man talks about a thing he has said to himself in the mirror so many times, it has worn smooth. "I'm sorry, Adrian." "Don't be. I'm telling you because you asked, and because you should know who you are being kept awake at night to help catch. You should not be under any illusion that this is a heroic undertaking. Sasha was my brother. I loved him. I also knew him. He was not an innocent man. Sinclair murdered him for a business reason. I'm going to end Sinclair for a business reason of my own, and also because Sasha was mine. And my mother lit a candle every Sunday for 2 years because we let her believe the lie we told her. That is not a good reason. It is my reason." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked." "No." "Why are you telling me this?" "The ugly version." He looked at her. "Because I'm not going to ask you to stand in a room with me and do something dangerous for a man I have dressed up for you. If you're in this, you should be in it knowing me, not a version I built for a waitress who asked." "I'm not a waitress." "What?" "Not right now." He nodded slowly. "Fair. Keep going." He kept going. He told her about the network, about how Sinclair had, in the last 18 months, been moving money for a group Adrian's people had started calling the Ledger because they could not find a real name and they needed something to put on a whiteboard. The ledger was new, and it was large, and it was not American money, originally, though it was becoming American money very fast. It had bought real estate in 3 states. It had funded 2 political campaigns quietly, through legitimate-looking PACs. It had set up a trucking company in Ohio that was not really a trucking company. It had a hand in a regional bank in Tennessee. It was the kind of growth that scared Adrian not because it was criminal. Adrian was not scared of criminal, but because it was patient. The Ledger was not a group that wanted to break laws and get rich. The Ledger was a group that wanted to own things, slowly, permanently, and Sinclair was their hinge. Which means, Adrian said, that we do not merely need to kill a man. Killing him is easy. I could kill him this afternoon if I knew where he slept. Killing him does not solve the problem. The money keeps moving. A new hinge appears within a month. We need to take him in a way that ends the Ledger with him. We need his records, his routes, his people. We need the parts of his operation that live in his head, because Sinclair is too smart to keep much on paper. Okay? And that is why you are a problem I have not solved yet. Because I can ID him. Because you are the only person currently alive on the planet who can put him at a specific location on a specific day in a specific act of handoff, and who he does not yet know is still breathing. So he still thinks I'm dead. He thinks 4 men drove out to a town in the middle of nowhere and handled a waitress. Yes, he has not heard from the 4 men. He is not going to hear from the 4 men. He is, by now, suspicious, but he does not yet have confirmation. He has an empty space where a confirmation should be, and a man like Sinclair does not like empty spaces, but he also does not panic over them. He will send more men, eventually, but he will send them carefully, and he will send them to your apartment in Belmore, and he will send them to Hal's Diner, and he will send them to the places a waitress named Lena Cross is expected to be. He will not send them here, because he does not know this place exists, and because he does not know who I am, and because the last thing in the world Sinclair is expecting is that a waitress in a nothing town happened to get interrupted by the one man on this continent who has been hunting him for 3 years. That's a lot of luck. It's not luck. I don't believe in luck. What do you believe in? He thought about it. Timing. Timing is not luck. Timing is what happens when 2 different people have been walking toward the same place for a long time without knowing it. She sat with that. Outside the window, somewhere on the grounds, a dog barked once. A big, deep bark. A bark with real lungs behind it. And she remembered he had told her about a mutt named Joe. Okay, she said. So what do we do? We, Adrian, I just told you I'm not going to sit in the attic. Stop saying I and start saying we, or I'm going to walk out that front door right now and take my chances with a Greyhound bus, and we both know how that ends. He almost smiled again. He almost actually smiled this time. It was the closest she had seen him come. We, he said. We. All right, we start with Jesse. Jesse's dead. Jesse is dead, Pete is dead, Marcus is dead. The 4th one, his name was Danny, by the way. Danny Reeves. He was 26 and had a sealed juvenile record and a lot of tattoos, and Danny is also dead. But before Marcus died, he had a conversation with one of my men, a long one. Marcus talked. Marcus talked quite a lot. Marcus was the one who had reservations. You noticed that? I noticed. Marcus had reservations because Marcus was not from the same crew as Jesse and Pete. Marcus was a borrowed asset. Somebody called in a favor and got Marcus added to the job at the last minute, as a 4th body, to make sure it got done. Marcus was there because the original plan was that Jesse and Pete would do it clean, break in at your apartment late, cover the mouth, done, and whoever arranged it decided at the last minute that that was too risky. So they added Danny, who is a pair of hands, and they added Marcus, who is a professional. They changed the plan from a break-in to a diner scene, because a diner scene gives you witnesses, and witnesses build a narrative of a drunken brawl, and drunken brawls close quickly in towns like Belmore. It was a good plan. It would have worked. But Marcus was not comfortable with the change. Marcus was a professional, and professionals don't like last-minute changes. And that discomfort is why Marcus pulled back at the end and said enough. And it is why he was still articulate enough to have a conversation afterward. Where's Marcus now? Marcus is in the ground. Okay. But before he was in the ground, Marcus gave us a name. The name of the man who called in the favor that added him to the job. Who? A man named Arthur Vey. Never heard of him. You wouldn't have. Arthur Vey is a middle layer. He is a person who hires people for other people. He sits between Sinclair and men like Jesse. Sinclair does not hire Jesse directly. Sinclair calls a man who calls Arthur Vey, and Arthur Vey calls Jesse. That layering is how Sinclair survives. That layering is also how we find him, slowly, because each layer is one man, and each man has a weakness, and a man like Arthur Vey has more weaknesses than most. What are his weaknesses? His daughter. She looked at him. Her stomach turned over once. Adrian? Not the way you think. Are you sure? I am sure. Let me be very clear about this, Lena, because you are new to this, and I can see what you're about to think. I have never, in my life, touched a child to get to a father. Neither has my father before me. Neither has my grandfather. There are rules. Some of them are rules because they are decent, and some of them are rules because they are practical, and some of them are both. That is both. Arthur Vey's daughter is 15 years old. We will not touch her. We will not threaten her. We will not even speak to her. Then what? She has leukemia. The word landed in the room like a dropped glass. She was diagnosed 2 years ago. She has been in and out of a particular hospital in Philadelphia. Arthur Vey has a great deal of money, but the specific treatment his daughter needs is experimental, and the specific doctor who administers it has a waiting list, and Arthur Vey has been on that waiting list for 7 months. It has happened that I have a certain amount of influence over who moves where on that waiting list. Adrian, I know how this sounds. You're going to bribe a man by saving his daughter's life. I'm going to give a man a choice. The choice is, tell me everything you know about Sinclair, and your daughter moves to the top of the list tomorrow. Legitimately, medically, because she qualifies and there was a clerical error keeping her down, and also because the hospital owes me a favor I have been holding for 6 years for exactly this kind of moment. Refuse, and your daughter stays where she is, which is also legitimate and medical, because nothing about her situation changes. I am not threatening her. I am offering him the thing he wants most in the world in exchange for the thing I want most in the world, and I'm using leverage I actually have. And I am not moving her back down the list if he says no. I just don't move her up. Lena sat with that. She sat with it a long time. She turned it over in her head and she looked at it from every side, and she tried to find the thing that was wrong with it because she could feel that there was something wrong with it, and it took her a minute to figure out what. It's still a bribe, she said. Yes. A man shouldn't have to betray his boss to get his daughter treated. No, he shouldn't. The world shouldn't work that way. It shouldn't. But it does. It does. And you're not the reason it does. No, but I'm a man who uses the fact that it does. I want to be honest with you about that. I am not a good man, Lena. I do things that, in a better world, no one would need to do. In this world, I do them. I sleep. I am telling you this because you asked what we were going to do, and I don't want to tell you a pretty version of it. She nodded. She drank more coffee. Her hands had stopped shaking at some point without her noticing. Okay. Okay, go do that. What else? The bank. The bank in Tennessee. The bank in Tennessee. We have a friend who works in its compliance department. She has been there 3 years. She did not start working for us. She started working for herself, flagging transactions she didn't like. And she flagged enough of them that eventually she got scared. And when she got scared, she reached out to a journalist. And when the journalist got scared, because again, a man like Sinclair makes journalists scared, the journalist reached out to me. Why you? Because people know to, eventually. The thing about being the man who has been hunting Sinclair for 3 years is that eventually the people who have their own problems with Sinclair start finding their way to you. Our compliance friend has been feeding us transaction data for 8 months. We have routes. We have patterns. What we do not have is a time-stamped face at a location. We have a great many faceless timestamps at locations, and a great many faceless locations at times, and we have not been able to stitch them together without a witness who could say this face was there on this day. And that's me. That's you. Your motel. Your parking lot. Your Tuesday, 2 weeks ago. That particular handoff, we now know because of your sighting, matches a transfer we had tracked in data as originating out of a front company in Delaware and terminating in an account in the Caymans. It was a $9 million movement. We did not know who carried the briefcase. We knew there was a briefcase. We did not have a face on it. Now we do. $9 million. Yes, in a briefcase. It happens less often than movies suggest, but it happens. Jesus. He didn't have much to do with it. She laughed. It surprised her. She couldn't remember the last time anything had been funny. He looked at her over his coffee, and his mouth did the smallest thing, almost a smile again, and he let the laugh pass without comment. Okay, she said. What do you need from me, specifically, today, not next month, today? He considered. Today, nothing. You need another day to rest. Tomorrow, Teo is going to come back to this room, and he is going to sit with you for 3 hours, and he is going to ask you to tell the story of that parking lot 58 times, in different orders, with different questions. That's how memory works. Memory is not a videotape you rewind. Memory is a thing you reconstruct each time, and each reconstruction tells you different pieces. We are going to reconstruct it until we have every piece you have. The driver, the second car, the wire behind his ear. She looked at him, sharply. I didn't tell you about the driver. You didn't. I remembered him last night. I didn't tell anyone. I know you didn't. Then how? Because Teo mentioned yesterday evening that your eyes moved twice during the identification. Once to the picture you ended up naming, once earlier to a different picture. He did not push you on the second one because I had told him not to push. The second picture was a man we have long suspected drives for Sinclair. Teo put that together afterward, which told me that you had seen more than a handoff, which told me that you were probably going to lie awake last night remembering more. I didn't lie awake on purpose. I know. I was trying to sleep. I know. Do you always know this much? About a thing I have spent 3 years on, yes. She set her cup down. Adrian? Yes. I want to see Dwight. He blinked. It was the first time she'd surprised him since the car. The cook. The cook. He took a punch for me. I left him there. I want to see him. He is fine. He is at home. His nose is in a splint. He has been paid a great deal of money through an unrelated channel so that he can keep the diner closed for 2 months and still pay his staff. Adrian. He is fine. I want to see him. Adrian was quiet. Lena, Belmore is not safe for you. Sinclair will send someone there eventually. If you are seen in that town again, we are going to have a very different kind of problem. Then I won't be seen. Bring him here. Bring him here. Bring him here for an afternoon. Have one of your men pick him up, drive him here in a car with dark windows. I see him. I apologize to him face to face. I tell him I'm alive, and your man drives him home. That's it. A couple of hours. Lena, I need to do this, Adrian. He looked at her. Really looked at her. She felt him weighing her, not as an asset this time, but as a person, measuring what would happen if he said no. Why? Because I left him on the floor. You were being beaten unconscious. I still left him. That is not guilt. That is survival. It feels like guilt. I don't care if it technically isn't. It feels like it. And if I'm going to do any of the things you're about to ask me to do, sit in rooms with men who hire men, testify to things, maybe someday stand in a witness stand or whatever equivalent your world has, I cannot do them with Dwight's face on the floor of that diner in my head. I need to put his face somewhere else. I need to see him sitting up in a chair telling me his nose hurts and asking me if I'm an idiot. I need that, Adrian. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. Okay? Okay. Kellen will pick him up tomorrow, before Teo's session. You get an hour with him in the East Sitting Room, same room you were treated in. Ruth will be nearby. Mrs. Ansell will insist on feeding him. Kellen will drive him home afterward and make sure nobody followed us. If any of that is not acceptable, tell me now. It's acceptable. Good. Thank you. Don't thank me. You're not asking much. You've asked for less in 2 days than most people I feed ask for in an hour. Yeah, well, she shrugged her good shoulder. Used to my situation. He didn't let that one pass. He set his cup down. Lena. Yeah. You should start getting used to a different situation. Adrian. I'm not being sentimental. I'm being practical. You have spent your entire adult life training yourself not to ask for things, because when you asked for things, nothing came. That is a survival strategy. It is a very good one for the world you came from. It is a very bad one for the world you are in now. You are going to need to ask people for things, Lena, and the people you are going to need to ask are going to need you to ask clearly, because they are professionals, and they need to know what you want in order to help you get it. I am telling you this because you will save yourself a great deal of pain later if you start practicing now. That was a speech. It was. I apologize. Don't apologize. Nobody's ever said that to me before. Then I'm glad I said it. You're going to ruin me, Adrian. I don't intend to. I'm teasing. I know you are. Are you? He looked at her and something in his face gave, just a little, just for a second, and she understood, with a small clean lurch in her stomach, that she was not going to examine right now, not for anything in the world, that Adrian Voss had understood that she was teasing, and that Adrian Voss had not been teased by anyone in a very long time, and that he did not, completely, know what to do with it. He cleared his throat. He picked up his folder again. He put his reading glasses back on, and then realized he had put them on, and took them off again, annoyed with himself. Tomorrow. Dwight at 11. Teo at 2. Light dinner at 7. You will rest in between. Ruth will be monitoring you. If at any point you have double vision, a bad headache, any numbness in your left hand beyond the expected soreness or vomiting, you press the button and someone comes immediately. Is that clear? Yes, doctor. I am not your doctor. I know. Go, rest. Eat the lunch Mrs. Ansell is about to bring you because she will be hurt if you don't. Okay? She stood. The chair let her go. She made it to the door and she paused with her good hand on the frame, the way Henry had paused last night when he'd named Sinclair out loud. Adrian. Yes. Thank you for not lying to me. He looked at her across the library. The fire moved behind his chair and put half his face in shadow. He did not say anything at first, then he said, Thank you for not asking me to. She went out. She closed the door behind her softly. In the hall, she let out a long breath she had not known she was holding, and her bound hand was shaking a little again. Not from fear this time, from something else. And she didn't have a name for it yet, and she didn't go looking for one. She walked back to the foyer, and Henry was there as if he had known the exact minute she would reappear, and he walked her back upstairs without comment. And when she got to the blue room, there was a tray on the little folding table with soup and bread, and a small dish of stewed apples with cinnamon, and a folded napkin with a sprig of rosemary tied to it with kitchen string. And Lena Cross, who had once believed it was weakness to accept more than she had earned, sat down on the edge of the bed and ate the soup Mrs. Ansell had made her, one slow spoonful at a time, and she did not cry over it, but it was a near thing. Dwight came the next morning. Kellen drove the car through the gates at 11:10, and Lena heard the tires on the drive, and she was at the window before she could tell herself not to be, her good hand holding the curtain back an inch. She saw the passenger door open. She saw Dwight get out, stiff, one hand coming up to his splinted nose automatically the way he had always reached for his hat when he'd had a hat, years ago, before he'd stopped wearing one. He was wearing a collared shirt. Dwight had put on a collared shirt to come see her. She hadn't known he owned one. She went downstairs too fast and Ruth had to catch her elbow on the landing, and Ruth didn't scold her, just said quietly, Easy, honey, easy. He's not going anywhere. And Lena steadied herself and went the rest of the way down at a human speed. Dwight was in the sitting room, standing. He hadn't sat. His hands were at his sides and he looked at the walls like he didn't know where to put his eyes. Dwight. He turned. He saw her face, her real face, in daylight, still purple down the right side, the stitches in her lip, the cast on her hand, and his own face went. She saw it go. She saw his jaw lock and his eyes get wet, and he did not cry, because Dwight was a man who did not cry, but he came very close. Aw, kid. I know. Aw, kid. Dwight, sit down, please. Come here. Sit down. He sat. He sat on the edge of the armchair like it was going to bite him. She sat across from him, carefully, her bound hand in her lap. You look like hell. You look like a man who wore a collared shirt. He almost laughed. It hurt his nose. He winced. He pointed vaguely toward the kitchen. The lady out there. She won't stop feeding me. She fed me before you even came down. I had pie, Lena. It's 11 in the morning, and I had pie. That's Mrs. Ansell. Mrs. Ansell. Is she real? She is very real. Okay. They sat in silence for a minute. He looked at his hands. She looked at hers. I'm sorry, Dwight. Don't. I left you on the floor. Lena, don't. I ran. You didn't run. You got picked up and carried. I was awake for that part. I saw. Don't put that on yourself. I should have. Girl, you had a concussion and 3 cracked ribs and a busted hand. What were you going to do, carry me? He shook his head, slow. No. No. The only person to blame in that diner that night was the men who came in the door with bad intent. Not you, not me, them. And from what I understand, they ain't going to be doing that anywhere else. So, he cleared his throat. It was wet. So. You okay here? I'm okay. That fella treat you right? Which fella? The one who walked in. Mr. Adrian, yes, he does. You sure? I'm sure, Dwight. Because if he doesn't, you call me. I don't care how many men he has. I will come and I will get you. She laughed. It hurt her ribs. She laughed anyway. I know you will. All right. Dwight. Yeah. Thank you for picking up the knife. He looked at her. He didn't pretend not to know what she meant. I should have picked it up sooner. Don't, you heard yourself. Don't put that on yourself. He laughed, wet, a real laugh this time. He wiped his eyes with the back of his wrist, fast, like he was annoyed with them for misbehaving. Look at us, pair of idiots. Yeah. Lena. Yeah. Reggie's asking after you. Her throat closed. What do I tell him? Tell him I'm okay. Tell him I'm out of town for a little while. Tell him I'll bring him meatloaf when I get back. Dwight nodded. I can tell him that. Don't tell him where I am. I don't even know where I am, kid. She laughed again. She cried a little this time and didn't try to hide it. He pretended not to notice, which was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in the last 48 hours that didn't involve surgical tape. And Mrs. Ansell came in at exactly the right moment with a tray of sandwiches neither of them had asked for. And by the time Kellen tapped on the doorframe an hour later to say the car was ready, Lena Cross had put Dwight's face in a different place in her head, sitting up in a leather chair with a collared shirt on and a splint on his nose, asking her if she was okay. And that was the place she was going to keep him from now on. She walked him to the car herself. Ruth tried to stop her. She didn't let her. In the portico, with the gray afternoon light coming down, Dwight stopped at the open door of the sedan and he looked at her one more time. You come home sometime. I will. Not to stay, just to come by. I will. Good. He got in. Kellen closed the door gently. The car crunched down the drive and through the gates and was gone, and Lena Cross stood in the portico in borrowed sweatpants with her bound hand held against her stomach, and she watched the road swallow him, and she understood that she had just drawn a line around the old life, a small, careful line, and that the line was going to hold. She turned and walked back into the house. Teo was already in the library, setting up his tablet. The 3 hours with Teo were worse than the doctor. Lena hadn't expected that. Teo was patient, and he was gentle, and he poured her water when her cup ran low, and by the end of it she had told the story of the Moonlight Motel parking lot 58 times, just like Adrian had said she would, and she had remembered things she had not known she had seen. The side mirror on the second car had been broken, held on with silver duct tape. The man with the briefcase had shifted it from his right hand to his left before handing it over, as if his right shoulder hurt him. There had been a woman in the passenger seat of the second car, not the driver. A woman. Lena had not remembered the woman until the 40th retelling, when Teo had asked her, for the 10th time, to describe the exact shape of the second car's front end, and something in her head had loosened, and she had said, "Wait," and she had closed her eyes. And she had seen the woman's profile behind the rain-streaked glass, and she had said, "Oh, oh," Teo said back very quietly, and wrote for a long time. She slept hard that night, harder than any night since the diner, asleep without dreams or with dreams she did not remember, which was almost the same thing. When she woke, it was past 9, and Mrs. Ansell had left a tray, and the rosemary was a sprig of mint this time, and Lena sat on the edge of the bed and ate the toast and drank the tea and understood that she had passed some kind of marker without noticing. Her ribs hurt less. Her hand hurt about the same. Her face, in the mirror, was starting to look like a face again, still purple, but less red. The swelling going down, her right eye open enough to see out of. The stranger in the mirror was, very slowly, becoming a woman she recognized, a woman who had been remade around new hardware. She did not love the new face. She did not hate it. It was hers. That was enough for now. The days that followed had a shape. Ruth at 7, Mrs. Ansell at 8, whether Lena wanted to eat or not. Walk the long hall with her good hand on the wainscoting, then the stairs, then the garden path if the weather allowed. Teo at 10, some days, with follow-up questions. Dr. Marsh on Thursdays. Adrian at lunch when he was home. Adrian was not home a great deal. The work, when she saw it, did not look like work. It looked like paperwork. Adrian in the library with folders. Men in suits coming and going through the front door with briefcases that looked boring on purpose. Teo behind his laptop in a little office off the kitchen, not eating, eyes red. One afternoon, a woman Lena had never seen before arrived with 2 guards and went directly into the library, and Lena heard raised voices for an hour. Adrian's voice was not raised. Adrian's voice was never raised, but the woman's was. And then the woman came out, red in the face, and left in a car with different plates than the one she had come in. Lena did not ask. Adrian at dinner that night volunteered only that an account in the Caymans had been frozen that afternoon, quietly, and that the freeze had been done by the right agency for the wrong reason, and that sometimes the right thing came through the wrong door, and you took it anyway. A week became 10 days. 10 days became 2. The bank in Tennessee broke on a Tuesday morning. Lena was in the garden with Mrs. Ansell, helping her with nothing in particular because Mrs. Ansell had decided Lena needed sun, and sun was going to be provided, when Henry came out with a phone in his hand and a face she had learned to read. Henry's face had one setting when something was wrong and a second setting when something was very wrong, and the difference between them was a thing almost invisible, a kind of stillness that arrived in his shoulders. Today it was the second setting. Mr. Voss would like you to come inside, please." She came inside. Adrian was in the library. He was standing at the window with his back to her, phone still in his hand, the line already dead. Kellen was in the room too, and Teo, and a man Lena didn't know, blonde, heavy-shouldered, wearing a jacket instead of a suit, who turned out to be a lawyer Adrian kept in a city 2 states away for exactly the kind of morning this was going to be. "Federal subpoena landed at 8:15 this morning," the lawyer said, without preamble, the way tired men talk when there is no time to be polite. "Bank in Memphis. Books. All of them. Every account over a certain size. It's a fishing trip on paper, but it's not. They know what they're looking for. Our compliance friend sent everything she had to the right desk last night." "Sinclair," Lena said. "Sinclair's name is not on the subpoena. But yes, 3 of his shell accounts are. They'll find 4 more in the first hour, 11 more by end of day. By Thursday, they'll have a map." "And Sinclair?" "Sinclair will know before the end of the afternoon. He's got people inside that bank. Not our people. His. So he runs. He runs." Adrian turned from the window. "He doesn't run," Adrian said. Lena looked at him. "What? Sinclair doesn't run. That's not what he does. If he runs, the ledger collapses behind him, because everything he is to them is built on the idea that he is never surprised. He runs once, they stop needing him. He stays, he fights, he cleans, he explains, he survives. He has done it before. He will do it again." "Then what does he do?" "He calls Arthur Vey." The lawyer's head came up. "Adrian, Arthur Vey turned yesterday." "I know he turned yesterday. Sinclair doesn't. Sinclair thinks Arthur Vey is his man. Sinclair sometime in the next 3 hours is going to call Arthur Vey and tell him to do the thing Sinclair does when the ground shakes. He is going to tell Arthur Vey to set a meeting. A meeting. Sinclair does not run. He cleans. Cleaning means a meeting. He will want to see the 2 or 3 people who can hurt him most in a room. And he will want to look them in the face, and he will want to decide which of them he needs to kill and which of them he needs to pay. He always does this. It is how he survives. It is also the only moment in the entire operation of his life when he is in a single room with his own face. Lena understood what Adrian was telling her before he said it. You want to be in that room. I want to be in that room. Through Arthur Vey. Through Arthur Vey. Arthur Vey is now my asset. Arthur Vey, when Sinclair calls, will tell Sinclair he is setting the meeting. Arthur Vey will then tell me where and when the meeting is. I will arrange for it to happen in a place I control, with people Sinclair does not know are mine. And I will end this in person, on Thursday or Friday, depending on how much Sinclair wants to sweat first. Okay? And I need you there. The room got quiet. The lawyer opened his mouth and closed it again. Kellen's face did not change. Teo's did, a little. Adrian, Kellen said. Kellen? Boss, no. Kellen, I am going to ask her. I'm going to tell her what I need. She gets to say no. She understands this. Let me ask her. Kellen held his eyes on Adrian a second longer, the way a man does who is not going to say anything else, but who is going to make sure you remember that he disagreed, and then he looked away. Adrian came across the library, and he sat down in the leather chair across from the leather chair Lena had sat in 2 weeks ago. He gestured. She sat. Lena? Yeah. I need Sinclair to know, in the moment, that his version of events is over. I need him to understand that the empty space he has been looking at, the thing he couldn't get confirmation on, the waitress in Belmore who should be dead and wasn't, is a person. I need him to see you, for about 4 seconds. That's all. I need him to see your face and understand that he lost 3 weeks ago and didn't know. I need the piece of the plan that ends is his recognition. Because if he does not recognize it, he will not stop. He will rebuild. He will start over. I need him to end. You want me as a ghost. I want you as a person who is not dead. Same thing. Similar thing. I won't have to. You will not have to do anything. You will stand in a doorway. You will let him look at you. Kellen will be on one side of you. Ruth will be in the car. My men will be between you and him at every moment. The walk from doorway to car is 7 steps. We have measured. He will not get near you. You will not speak. You will not have to hear him speak. And then you will leave, and I will finish. 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 She looked at him. Adrian. Yes. If I stand in that doorway, you are going to kill him 5 minutes later. Yes. In front of me. No. You will be in the car. Ruth will drive you back here. You will not be in the building when it ends. But I will know. You will know. Okay? Lena, I want to be clear. You can say no. I have other ways to end this. They are worse ways. They take longer. More people die in them, but they exist. You are not the only option. You are the best option. There is a difference. I know the difference. Then tell me no if you need to tell me no. She thought about it. She thought about Jesse's hand on her wrist. She thought about the raked gravel. She thought about the pale-eyed man's eyes meeting hers across 40 feet of wet asphalt 2 weeks ago, in the rain, in a lot she had cut through because she'd been tired and cold and wanted to get home a little faster. She thought about Reggie. She thought about Dwight in his collared shirt. She thought about Arthur Vey's daughter, who was 15 years old and who, as of 3 days ago, had moved up a waiting list without knowing why. She thought about her mother, a long time ago, telling her not to let them see her run. I'll do it. Lena? I'll do it, Adrian. I'm not being brave. I'm not being stupid. I'm telling you I understand what I'm agreeing to, and I'll do it. Set the doorway up. I'll be in it. He looked at her. He looked at her for a long second. Then he nodded, once, and he stood up, and he said to the lawyer, "Get it drafted. A statement. Signed. If anything happens to her, it's on paper." To Kellen, doorway crew, full. Ruth in the car. 2 cars. The decoy route. All of it. To Teo, Arthur Vey's wife. Find out where she and her daughter will be on Thursday afternoon. I want them somewhere pleasant. A hotel. Paid for. Yes, boss. They moved. The library emptied out around her. Lena sat in the leather chair by herself for a minute, with her bound hand in her lap, and she listened to the house rearrange itself around what she had just said yes to, and she understood that she was, for the first time in her life, the weight on a scale that mattered. It didn't feel the way she had expected. It didn't feel like power. It felt like being needed, which was a different thing. And it was the first time in her adult life anybody had needed her for anything that wasn't coffee. She stood up carefully, and she walked out of the library, and she went up to the blue room, and she sat on the edge of the bed, and she did not cry, and she did not shake, and she did not fall apart. She just sat there with her good hand flat on the quilt, and she breathed, and she let the fear come in and move through her and leave again. When it was gone, or gone enough, she stood up and she washed her face in the bathroom sink, and she looked at herself in the mirror and she said out loud, "To nobody, okay?" And she meant it. Thursday came up fast. It came up cold, which was the weather's only contribution to the day. A low gray sky and the kind of wind that got under your coat, no matter how you buttoned it. Lena wore clothes Ruth had laid out for her. Dark jeans, a black sweater, a charcoal wool coat that fit her properly, boots with a flat sole. No jewelry. Her hair tied back. Her left hand in a smaller cast now. A plastic brace she could hide under her sleeve if she needed to, though nobody expected her to need to. She did not eat breakfast. Mrs. Ansell did not try to make her. Mrs. Ansell had, in her long life, fed a great many people on days like this, and she knew the ones who ate and the ones who didn't, and she simply set a small glass of orange juice on the tray and said, "Drink this, honey, at least this." And Lena drank it. Adrian was in the foyer at 10. He was wearing the black overcoat again, the one from the diner, and a darker suit under it, and he had not slept. Lena could tell because his jaw had a faint roughness at the corner he had missed with the razor, which was, in the small economy of his face, the equivalent of another man falling apart. He looked at her for a long moment, and she looked back, and neither of them said anything, because there was nothing to say that wouldn't have made the day harder. Kellen opened the door. The cars were waiting. The building they went to was not in a city. That had surprised her when Adrian had told her the night before. It was a warehouse, a real warehouse, off an exit nobody had a reason to take, 40 minutes from the house. Light industrial. A gravel yard. A loading dock. A small office on the second floor with a plate glass window that looked down on the warehouse floor. A front door and a back door and a side door and a fire door, all of them accounted for, all of them watched. Adrian had walked her through the floor plan on paper the night before, 3 times, until she could have drawn it herself. She could not draw it herself, but she knew where she was standing at every moment. That was the point. The drive was quiet. She sat next to Ruth in the back of the second car. Ruth did not talk. Ruth did not tell her it was going to be fine. Ruth read a paperback the whole way, a mystery with a sailboat on the cover, and the matter-of-factness of it steadied Lena more than any pep talk would have. Adrian's car was in front. Kellen was driving. A third car was behind them with 4 men Lena only half knew. A fourth car was already at the warehouse, had been there since dawn. They arrived at 11:10. She stayed in the car. Ruth stayed with her. The day moved. Arthur Vey came in at 11:40. Lena saw him from the car. A thin, tall man, maybe 55, in a good coat, walking the way a man walks when he has chosen to betray someone and has not yet decided if he can live with himself. She felt, watching him go through the side door, a short, sharp pity. She did not know him. She was not going to know him. She had eaten her toast 3 days ago because of him, in a way. She tried not to think about that too hard. Sinclair came in at 12:04. He came in a black sedan with a driver and a second man who got out and checked the perimeter before Sinclair did. The second man was thorough. He walked the fence line. He checked the angles. He did not find what he was looking for, which was a tell, which was something wrong, because Adrian's men were not on the fence line. They were inside already and had been for 2 hours. Sinclair got out of the car. Lena was ready for the shock, and it still hit her in the stomach. The pale eyes under the gray hair, the scar down the jaw, a thin line in the winter light. The way he moved, calm, unhurried, a man walking into a meeting he believed he was about to control. He looked exactly like the picture Teo had shown her. He looked exactly like the man in the parking lot. Every detail she had lived with for 2 weeks, every piece she had tried to forget and then tried to remember was in the frame now. 3-dimensional breathing, A real man in a real coat walking toward a real door. He did not see the car she was in. The windows were dark and the car was angled behind the corner of the building. He went up the steps of the loading dock. He went in through the side door. The door closed behind him. She let out a breath. Ruth turned a page. Inside the warehouse, things Lena could not see were happening. Arthur Vey was sitting at a small table on the warehouse floor. Sinclair was coming in through the side door with his second man. The second man was discovering very quickly and very quietly that the warehouse had more people in it than it was supposed to. Kellen was on the second floor by the plate glass window behind a stack of crates. Adrian was in the little office, on a chair, waiting. The plan, as Adrian had walked her through it, was this. Arthur Vey would greet Sinclair. Arthur Vey would guide Sinclair toward the office to take the meeting in private, because Sinclair always took meetings in the smallest room, because the smallest room was the easiest to control. Sinclair would start up the stairs to the office. On the landing, halfway up, he would see Adrian through the open office door. In that moment, before Sinclair could turn, Kellen would speak. Not loud, just a word, sir, that Sinclair would recognize as the voice of a man with a weapon behind him. Sinclair would know. Sinclair would go still. Sinclair would be walked the rest of the way up into the office. And then Adrian had added at the end the thing Lena had said yes to. Before Sinclair was walked into the office, he would be turned by the shoulder, gently, toward the side door he had come in through. The door would be held open, and in the doorway for 4 seconds, no more, would be Lena Cross. Not speaking, not moving, just standing. And Sinclair would see her face, and Sinclair would understand, finally, what he had not been able to confirm for 3 weeks, and the expression on his face in that moment would be the proof. For Adrian, that the ending had begun. That was the part. 4 seconds. Kellen came to the car at 12:18. Lena. Yeah. Now. She got out. The cold hit her face. Ruth didn't get out. Ruth put the paper back down on her lap, face down, to hold her place. Lena noticed that, and it was strangely the detail she remembered for years afterward, the way Ruth had marked her page before watching her go. Kellen walked her around the corner of the building. 4 steps. 5. 6. A man Lena didn't know held the side door open from the inside. The warehouse was cold and echoey and smelled like concrete and old oil. The office above was lit. She could see the yellow of it through the plate glass. Sinclair was on the stairs, halfway up, his back to her. He was going to turn. Kellen touched her elbow just above the brace. He did not say anything. He didn't have to. She knew. Sinclair's foot paused on the stair. He turned. He turned because his second man, who was now face down in the office doorway with a knee on his back, though Sinclair had not yet processed that, had made a sound. He turned the way a man turns when his instinct tells him something is wrong before his head catches up. Careful. Slow. Hand already moving under his coat. And across the length of the warehouse floor, in the open side door, he saw her. Lena did not do anything. She didn't pose. She didn't set her shoulders. She didn't look brave. She just looked. Her face was still bruised. Her eye was still a little narrowed on the right side. Her hand was in its brace at her side. She looked the way she looked, which was the way a waitress in Belmore looked 3 weeks after 4 men had tried to beat her to death. A little too thin and a little too tired and deeply, irreversibly alive. Sinclair's hand stopped moving under his coat. She saw his face go through it. First, he didn't recognize her. That took half a second. He was a man who met a lot of faces, and he had to sort them. He sorted her fast. The recognition landed. Second, he understood. Not what she was doing there, not yet. Just that she was alive. That was the piece that mattered. The empty space he had been looking at, the missing confirmation from 4 men in a town in the middle of nowhere, the detail that had been itching at the back of his head for 3 weeks. It filled in. She was the answer. Third, and this was the part Adrian had needed him to feel, and she understood in that second why Adrian had needed her face and not a photograph. Sinclair understood that if she was alive, and if she was standing in this doorway, then he had been known for longer than he had realized. Days longer, weeks longer. That the meeting he was at was not his meeting. That Arthur Vey, sitting calmly at the table behind him, had sold him in advance. That every piece of his operation that had felt ordinary in the last 72 hours had not been ordinary. The federal subpoena, the frozen account, the compliance woman in Tennessee, the absence of his 4 men in Belmore, all of it, not independent failures. A pattern. His face did something. It was small. A tightening at the corner of his mouth, a small breath through the nose. Not fear. Sinclair was not the kind of man who did fear the way most men did. What it was, she would decide later, was something like recognition. The way a very old predator looks when another, quieter predator has finally stepped out from behind a tree. His eyes did not leave hers. He said, from across the warehouse, loud enough to carry, and it was the only time she ever heard his voice, "Miss Cross." She didn't answer. Kellen's hand was on her elbow again, gentle, steady. "Okay," Kellen said under his breath. "Okay, back." She stepped back. The doorway closed in front of her, not slammed, just drawn closed by the man who was holding it. And Kellen walked her back around the corner of the building, and Ruth had the car door open, and Lena got in, and she sat down, and Ruth put the paper back in the door pocket and started the engine, and they pulled out of the gravel yard and onto the service road and off the exit and onto the highway. Lena did not look back. She sat with her good hand flat on her thigh and her bound hand in her lap, and she breathed, slow, the way Dr. Marsh had told her to breathe with cracked ribs, and she did not cry, and she did not speak. Ruth drove. 20 minutes out, Ruth said very softly without taking her eyes off the road. "You did good, honey." "Okay." "You did real good." "Okay." "You want the radio on?" "Please." Ruth turned the radio on. It was some country station, a man singing about a pickup truck. Lena let it be a noise. She let it fill up the car. She watched the highway go by, and she did not think about what was happening in the warehouse behind them. And she did not, specifically, picture the office and the plate glass and the man on the chair waiting, because she had agreed not to be in the building when it ended, and she was going to keep that agreement with herself. Adrian had drawn a line for her. She was going to stay on her side of it. They got back to the house at 2:14. Adrian got back at 4:30. She was in the library when he came in. She had not planned to be. She had gone in there because it was the warmest room in the house on a cold afternoon, and because Joe the old mongrel, whom she had finally met a week before, and who had decided within 5 minutes of meeting her that she was the second most interesting human in the building, was asleep on the rug in front of the fire. She had been reading a book. She was not going to remember which book. She had been reading it the way people read on airplanes, eyes moving, nothing going in. The library doors opened. Adrian came in. He closed them behind him. Joe lifted his head, thumped his tail twice on the rug, and went back to sleep. Adrian stood there for a second. Then he came over and he sat in the other leather chair. He did not speak. He put his hands on his knees, palms down, and he looked at the fire. She waited. "It's done," he said after a while. "Okay." Arthur Vey is at his hotel with his wife and daughter. He will be questioned over the next week by people who are not me. He will not be charged with anything. He has a deal. His daughter will start treatment on Monday. "Okay." The bank in Memphis will fail by the end of the month. The ledger, what we have been calling the ledger, will not survive it. The accounts are frozen. The trucking company in Ohio is under investigation. The regional bank in Tennessee is cooperating. There will be arrests. They will not all be the right arrests. Some men who deserve to go down will not. Some men who did not fully deserve it will. That is the nature of it. It is not a tidy ending. I told you it would not be. You told me. There will be news in the morning, small news. Page 5. There will be bigger news next week. By next month, the name Vincent Sinclair will have been spoken out loud in 3 federal filings and a congressional hearing, and then it will sink back underneath because men like him are not supposed to exist on the front page. That is the deal. They live underneath and we kill them underneath. Adrian. Yes. Is he dead? He looked at her. Yes. Okay. I will tell you more if you want, or I will not. I will tell you anything you ask. I will not tell you anything you don't. She thought about it. Did he say anything? At the end? Yes. He said, Adrian paused. He seemed to be choosing, not whether to tell her, but how. He said he would have paid me a great deal of money for you. A specific number. I will not repeat it. He did not understand until the last minute of his life that I was not a man who could be offered money for you. That surprised him. He did not think men like me existed anymore. Do they? One or two? Adrian. Yes. I don't know how to be okay about this. I know. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel anything. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel relieved. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel sick. I don't feel either one. I feel like I ate a meal too fast. That's it. That's what I feel. Is that wrong? No. It feels wrong. It's not wrong. Is that how it feels for you? He was quiet for a long time. No, he said finally. For me, it feels like a door I have been leaning against for 3 years just opened, and I fell through it. And now I am on the other side, and the room on the other side is a room I have never been in before, and I do not know what is in it. Oh, yes. That's worse. It is not worse. It is different. Adrian, Lena, listen. Yeah, I want to tell you something. I've thought about it for 2 weeks. I've tried to say it to you 3 times, and I have not said it because every time I started, I was not sure I was saying it for the right reasons. I want to say it now. I want you to hear it clearly, and I do not want you to answer me right away. Do you understand? Yes. When you are healed, all the way healed, not the kind of healed where your ribs stop hurting, but the kind where your whole body stops flinching at a bell over a door. When you are that kind of healed, you are going to be able to do a thing you have not been able to do in a long time. You are going to be able to choose. Really choose, not survive. Choose. Yes, I have been thinking about what that choice looks like for you. I have been thinking about it because I will admit I have a preference. I would like you to stay. Not because I need you. The ledger is done. Sinclair is done. You are not a witness anymore. You are not useful to me in the way you were useful to me 3 weeks ago. I am not asking you to stay because you are useful. I am asking you, if you decide to stay, because I have in the last few weeks come to regard you very highly, and I would like to continue to. Adrian, let me finish. Okay, I am not a man who can offer anyone a normal life. I'm aware of that. I'm also aware that I am quite a bit older than you are, and that I have spent 20 years in a profession that has changed me in ways I do not always see clearly, and that there are a great many reasons a person as young as you might want to walk out the front door of this house and never look back. If you want that, I have prepared for it. There is an account in your name already set up that will carry you through the rest of your life comfortably in any city on the continent you would like to live in. There's a new identity ready if you want one. There's a small one if you don't. There are people who will check on you very quietly from a distance for as long as I am alive to make sure nobody from the old world finds its way to your door. That offer is not conditional on anything. It is there if you want it, and it is there if you don't want anything else. Do you understand that? Yes. I want to be very specific about one thing. I am not making that offer contingent on you saying yes to the other thing. They are separate. If you want the account and the apartment in a city far away, you get them. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever. The other thing is not a tax you have to pay. I understand. Good. Now, the other thing. Okay, if you want to stay, you can. Not in the blue room forever. Somewhere of your own. We will figure that out. You can stay here on this property. You can have a cottage on the west side of the grounds that has been empty for 6 years. You can redo it however you like. You can work if you want to work. You can study if you want to study. You can go to the community college you left a semester at and finish it if you want to finish it. You can do whatever a 24-year-old woman who has just been handed a life should do. And you and I, separately, entirely separately from any of that. You and I could see each other, carefully, slowly, with a great deal of room. I am not a man who pushes. I do not intend to start. I would like to know you. I would like you to know me. What we do with that knowledge later, if there is a later, is a thing we would figure out later. And if the answer is that we remain friends and nothing more, that is also a good answer, and I will not be lesser for it. Adrian? Yes. That was the longest speech you have ever made. I know. You practiced it. I did not practice it. Yes, you did. He almost smiled. I practiced parts of it. Which parts? The part about the account. The part where you told me I don't have to pay a tax. Yes. Why that part? Because I was worried it would come out wrong. Because I could see how it might sound if I said it clumsily. I did not want it to sound clumsy. I wanted you to hear it the way I meant it. Okay. Will you think about it? Yes. Take as long as you need. Okay. A week, a month, a year. I am not going anywhere. Adrian. Yes. I want to tell you what I think already. I will think about it more. I will take time. I will do all the things a smart person should do before making a decision like this. But I want to tell you what I think today so that you're not sitting in this library tonight wondering. All right. I'm not going to take the account and leave. Lena, you don't have to. Let me finish. Okay. I'm not going to take the account and leave. Because if I did that, I would spend the rest of my life in an apartment in a city I didn't choose, drinking good coffee and wondering if I had been a coward. That is not a life I want. I know myself. I have had 24 years to get to know myself. I ran from things when I was young because I had to. I am not young anymore, not in the ways that matter, and I do not have to run. Lena, I'm also not going to stay here because you asked me to. Good. I'm going to stay here because a woman in the blue room, me, the day I identified Sinclair's face on Teo's tablet, made a promise to herself that she was going to stop being hidden. If I take the account and go, I'm hidden. I'm not going to do that to her. She has had a bad enough month. Okay. I'm going to stay, Adrian, because you are right that I get to choose. And this is what I choose. I choose the cottage. I choose the community college. I choose Mrs. Ansell's soup, which I think may actually be ruining me for all other soup. I choose Joe. I choose to see you, slowly, carefully, as two adults, with the understanding that neither one of us is the person the other might want us to be, and that is fine, and that is the only honest way to start anything. Okay? I choose this, and I'm going to keep choosing it, for as long as it keeps being a thing I can honestly choose. If it ever isn't, if you ever stop being a man I can choose, I will leave. I want you to know that now, so that if I ever have to leave you, you will not be surprised. I won't be surprised. Good. Lena. Yeah. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm going to anyway. Okay. They sat in the library. The fire burned down a little. Joe rolled onto his back and made the sound old dogs make, a groaning, contented sound, and the clock on the mantel ticked, and somewhere deeper in the house, Mrs. Ansell was starting dinner, because Mrs. Ansell's answer to everything was starting dinner, and Lena thought, I'm going to know that sound for a long time. That is going to be my clock now. The weeks after, life put itself together in the strange, patient way life does when nobody is fighting it. Lena moved into the cottage on the west side of the property in the first week of spring, when the ground softened enough to start a small garden she did not yet know how to keep. She took a paralegal course online because it interested her, and because the logic of it satisfied something in her she had not known was hungry. She finished the semester she had left at the community college, and then she finished another, and then she stopped calling it school and started calling it a degree. She kept the cast, after it came off, in a drawer in her bedside table. She did not know why. She did not throw it out. Belmore went on being Belmore. Dwight reopened Hal's after 3 months and hired a new girl to work the late shift, a kid named Danny who was 19 and sharp, and who Dwight watched the way a man watches a door he has learned to watch. Reggie came in Thursdays. Lena sent a meatloaf every other week through Kellen, with a note written in her own hand that said, still upright, still walking, still not a coward, love L. And Reggie, who had never known how to reply, tipped Danny $3 on a $2 coffee every single time because he knew. Arthur Vay's daughter started treatment on a Monday. She was in remission by the following winter. Arthur Vay himself did 3 years in a minimum security facility for charges Adrian's lawyer had negotiated down from things much worse. And when he came out, he did not go back to the business he had been in, because the business he had been in no longer existed. He became, very quietly, a bookkeeper for a small charity in a suburb of Philadelphia. Lena did not meet him. She did not need to. She thought about him sometimes, the thin man in the good coat, walking toward a side door on a cold Thursday, and she thought, the world should not work this way. The world does. A man should not have to sell out his boss to save his child's life. A man did. His child lived. It wasn't justice. It was a thing adjacent to justice, which was sometimes, in a world like this one, the best a person could do. Us. Adrian was, in the months that followed, both more and less than she had expected. He was more because he was patient in a way she had not believed men could be. He did not push. He did not assume. He asked her every single time before he did anything. He asked her if he could walk with her in the garden. He asked her if she would have dinner with him at the main house, or if she would rather he came to the cottage. He asked her, one night in late summer, sitting on the porch of her cottage with 2 glasses of something cold and pointless between them, if he could hold her hand. She said yes. He did. He did not do anything else for a long time after that, not because he didn't want to, but because he had decided for himself and not for her that she was going to set every pace of this, and that he would rather spend a year holding her hand than rush a thing that deserved a year. He was less because he was a man, and men, even men like Adrian, had bad days and crooked moods and moments when the old life leaked through into the new. There were nights when he sat in the library and did not speak to anyone for hours. There were phone calls that put his jaw wrong for a whole evening. There was, once, in October, a week where he was simply gone, somewhere she was not told about, and he came back with a small white bandage at his hairline that he would not explain. She did not make him. She had agreed privately not to. Every life has things in it that do not get shared, and a life like his had more than most. And she had decided early that she was not going to be the kind of partner who tried to hold up a lamp in every corner. They did not marry. Not that year, and not the next. It became a thing they stopped discussing, not out of avoidance, but out of agreement. They had the cottage and the main house and the long gravel drive between them. And they had Mrs. Ansell's dinners and Joe the mongrel until Joe died in his sleep on the rug in front of the library fire one February. And they had the particular, quiet, unsurprised love of 2 people who had chosen, late and awkwardly and with a lot of scar tissue, to choose each other again every morning. That was enough. Lena had come from a world in which nobody chose her. The idea of being chosen, daily, by a man who could have had any life he wanted and had picked, of all things, her, was not a thing she ever fully got used to, and it was also not a thing she was in any hurry to get used to. The unused to-ness of it was part of what made it worth the wait. Belmore did forget her, eventually. Small towns forget. Some of Dwight's regulars remembered for a few years that there had been a girl named Lena once, a quiet girl, who had worked the late shift, who had been in some kind of trouble, who had moved away. The story they told about her among themselves was not the real one. It was never going to be the real one. That was fine. That was, in the end, the point. What Lena kept, and what she would have told anyone who asked her later in life, and a few people did ask her in the years that came, because she did end up doing some quiet public work with shelters and legal aid and women who had walked in out of a specific kind of cold, was this. She would have told them that the world does not owe you a rescue, that Adrian Voss walking into Hal's diner on the night it happened was not a gift the universe was handing down. It was a door that opened because 2 people had been walking toward the same room for a long time without knowing it, and because when it opened, she had made a choice, in a booth behind a counter, with a broken hand and a closed eye. To take an arm she did not have to take. To get into a car she did not have to get into. To stand in a doorway she did not have to stand in. A door opening is not the same thing as walking through it. Most people, most of the time, did not walk through. She had. She would have told them that the man who found her in the doorway that day did not fix her. That nobody fixed anybody. That the idea of being fixed was a lie sold by people who wanted to make you small by making you grateful. What Adrian had done was something quieter and harder. He had stood next to her while she fixed herself. He had not flinched at any part of the fixing. He had not made her pretend she was further along than she was. That was, in the end, the difference between a man who took and a man who stayed. And she would have told them. This was the part she believed most in the end, when she was older and her left hand ached before the rain and her hair had a little gray at the temple the way his had. That a person who has been invisible their whole life is not broken. A person who has been invisible their whole life has, in fact, been practicing. Practicing watching. Practicing listening. practicing the quiet, slow, unbeautiful work of being alive in a world that does not always make room for you. When that person is finally, accidentally, seen by a stranger in a doorway on a cold night, they do not become a new person. They become for the first time the person they already were, in full view, without apology, in a light that was always going to suit them. That was the lesson, if there was a lesson. That was the thing she carried with her out of that diner, in the end, and down a long gravel road she had not known she was walking toward, and into a life she had not been promised, and had, therefore, been free to build. The bell over Hal's door still rang, every time it opened. Danny got used to it. The new customers didn't notice it. But somewhere, on a porch at the end of a gravel drive, a woman with an old scar on her scalp and a brace she didn't need anymore and a drawer she didn't open anymore sat with a man who never raised his voice. And she listened to the wind move in the oaks and she did not flinch. That was the end of it. That was enough.